Today, I'm joined by Sleep Easy, someone who, like me, has appreciated and partaken in the cinematic journey of Final Fantasy VII and the remake, and now coming up with Rebirth. It's going to continue. Sleep Easy, if you don't know him, is a lore master of Final Fantasy VII. He's known for his gargantuan, mammoth-long, 5-hour-long videos on YouTube where he dissects every possible microscopic piece of Final Fantasy VII lore from every game in the compilation. It's absolutely incredible. And today, we're going to dive into the lore. We're going to dive into the cinematic language. We're going to dive into theories. And it's going to be a lovely time. So, sleep easy. We have behind us this lovely new art that just dropped. Look at it. Look at that. Oh, hey, Sephiroth.
That's nuts.
Yeah. So, there's a couple things. This is a great place to start talking about FF7 Rebirth. Obviously, it's a beautiful image of, I think, one of the most iconic scenes in gaming history of Nibelheim incident. But we have a sort of pattern, which you can't really see because I'm in the way right now, a pattern behind Sephiroth. Now, a lot of people have noticed it looks like a wing. Did you notice the other thing it looks like?
Okay, hold on. Let me see. Does it look like a whisper? Don't tell me it looks like a whisper.
I just, I'll tell you what I think it looks like. So it's the logo of FF7. It's the meteor.
Oh yeah.
Right?
You know what? Yes.
Yeah. It's the logo and the wing.
I could not agree more with that. That is actually like a super spot on thing. This whole this is the thing that I love about it, and I hate to just like completely. Now I'm just gonna explode on the thematic structuring of.
That's why we brought you in, man. Go crazy.
This is perfect, and this is a perfect use of just all of the themes throughout. Final Fantasy VII, both compilation and like even the new remake, the color choice, the significance of this OG scene paired with the new sort of introduction of the symbolism of fire, the wing that was introduced in Advent Children and has been seen since in remake. It is, and then with your pairing with Meteor is actually probably the most relevant. Because all of these things are linked to the concept of like death, to what Sephiroth represents, to the Nibelheim scene where all of this tragedy happens, these negative feelings that are impacting Cloud. It's all encompassing. It's just like a big gift wrapped present to anybody who actually is like sort of just again like into cinema. Like it's so attentive and so like aware of itself. And I have to ask how you feel about the same image. Like what is it like that, because obviously it's the Nibelheim scene and that is in itself has like a huge nostalgic value.
Yeah.
How does this image like impact you? What's your perception of this?
Man, I was talking about it a little bit on Twitter. Like I feel like we're going to see it finally how we all imagined as kids. You know what I mean? It's a fascinating concept that I talked about a lot with the Pixel remasters, not because of the visuals, but because of the music. So it was like such a pleasure because Nobuo actually like was the musical director of all those remakes of the songs from 1 through 6 of Final Fantasy, right? So hearing each one of those the first time, quote unquote, was this like surreal experience because it's like I imagined it as real instruments when I was a kid. So now I'm hearing it, but it's like this weird imagination collaboration that happens where it's like, okay, I thought that would be a trumpet or an oboe. And so, oh, cool. Nobuo was actually, turns out, back in the day, picturing a violin or something, right? So it was this really cool thing. So with this, it's kind of the same thing. It's like, oh man, what did we picture? In sort of the non-CG pre-rendered moments. But even in those, of course, it's going to be performed now, right? There's going to be acting. There's going to be any human input on this as opposed to just text and kind of like wireframe animation, which is just, it's a whole different medium. It's an insanely different medium. So for me, it means so much as someone who's inspired to get into filmmaking by Final Fantasy and these directors like Nomura and Kitase and all these guys to now see like their vision of what they couldn't do back then is just the coolest thing ever. And sort of the image of this combined with the music, which is now live recorded, it's going to be in Rebirth. And, on top of the new mysteries they're including to kind of keep us on the edge of our seat and everything, it's just like, it's Christmas morning for an FFN, right? It's the best thing. And just as someone who appreciates art, It's so incredible. So I think this scene is really going to be powerful. And, you know, it's just so interesting that such an iconic story, just the backstory of Nibelheim and how Cloud tells it at Com, you know, it's like we're seeing it for the first time, even though we all know it. And it's such a fascinating concept, right? Don't you agree?
I do 100%. Like like imagery and the invoking of that feeling and re-experiencing this moment and the way that they have sort of set it up to be, I think is also like such a magical thing, because we're on our toes, and like every little thing that is, whether it's just like an enhancement, it all feels like, oh, is this leaning into different? Am I gonna hate the new Final Fantasy VII? And I experienced this actually, ironically, with this image. So when I saw the last trailer, excuse me, I'm taking off my shoes.
He's getting serious. He's locked in.
I know.
We get some locked in the chat and locked in emotes. He's ready.
Yeah. So the thing is that in the last trailer, we saw a moment where we saw Sephiroth in this scene. We saw like, Cloud's reaction to him, which, by the way, perfect. Like the facial expressions so far with everything that we've seen, they're 100% nailing it. Like everyone's reaction, it's just the PS5, the new graphical capability. It's all working. But I saw it, and it was in game when they showed Sephiroth, and I was like, you cannot. And I had that moment because I'm thinking about Final Fantasy VII. I'm not thinking rationally. I'm just experiencing this. I was like, I really hope that this isn't just an in-game cutscene. It can't just be an in-game cutscene.
Right.
This is the iconic Sephiroth moment. And then all of a sudden, and then logic kicked in for me, and then I remembered that they've already shown this scene back at like some event. We saw that there was like a fully rendered cutscene.
We did see it,
Now this image is back.
Man, we are on the same wavelength, because I thought the same thing. Is like, wait, was that just for the promo of the event, or are we getting in game? I have so many questions. Yeah,
right.
So many questions.
I just was super fired up, for lack of a better word. I was like, they can't do that to that precious scene, and I didn't think that I was so tied to those things in that way. But the more that I think we're getting closer to Rebirth, the more the feelings that I have for this game are kind of like, I'm wearing them on my sleeve more and more as we're getting closer. I'm like, oh, I don't care if like and I say this a lot because, my business is theory crafting, like the art of, building something up and having it completely washed away once things get official, or not, hopefully. But, I always think to myself, oh, that like I won't be too worried if things go like a different way, but the way that Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is trying to get us to engage with it is like, well, it could be different, and you could like, things could go all sorts of ways, and you're just like, I feel played with. I feel like I'm getting played with the more that they keep showing stuff. But I do think, and this is just to kind of go back to the subject of this image, one of the things that I will say about the last video, which I don't recommend anybody watching a 5-hour video in like one sitting, and you don't have to at all. But if you are interested in like the sort of the structure of themes that has led to this point of them making Remake, that was something I was very heavily fixated on, and obviously to an obsessive level, it's 5 hours. But the idea was just to say like, hey, like, the color use, which is a huge part of, I have a cinematography background, for those who don't know. So I'm very, very keyed into the imagery, the color usage, all of these things. That's where I kind of started. But
love it.
And I'm just realizing that the color purple, we'll talk about that in a second, which is where I started in YouTube, but talking about Final Fantasy VII. But the idea was that red being such a heavy thematic tie to Sephiroth, to Meteor, to like the imagery that we see of Meteor in the VR cutscene in Remake. It's linking to fire in Nibelheim. It has a linking to like the death of Dreams in Honor, which is very heavily tied to human aspects of Final Fantasy VII, where blue sort of represents humanity, water represents, that sort of side as well. all of those color associations just building up to this point now in Rebirth is going to be, it's going to be really interesting. And I actually think, and the reason why I brought up purple is that we also heard about 2 different worlds.
Yeah, recently. We did. Yeah.
And those color associations are also present there with the red and the blue. And they like use like backlighting to sort of light Sephiroth and Cloud in this way, which is, I think, super cool in the end of like Remake. And then what is it? It's the fact that the Harbinger also has like this purple glow in the center of it. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, because the Whispers are from the future, do these things, is that like the finality, the merging of these 2 colors? Is that why we've been seeing that kind of color association with purple with the Harbinger?
It's got to be intentional because, yeah, Sephiroth has that sort of purple color involved with him too. And it's like, wait.
Right.
What's the connection
and it's
here?
Only like here and there that we've seen it. And now we're kind of going full blown into like Sephiroth represents like that big red sky and like the box art and everything.
And then of course
like
red is like meteor from the original game, right? So it's like, what does this mean? But then then we can think about black materia and stuff. But I mean, this is one of the reasons I was so fascinated, like my sort of popular idea or theory, whatever you want to call it, of Sephiroth's backstory came from my fascination with just what you said. There's a scene in Remake where he like slices open the Whispers and opens up like a door into another place and then walks in, and it's like, what is this? And it's like this magical type thing, and it's like, okay, was that Sephiroth's power that did that? Was that the Masamune that did that? Where does the Masamune come from, by the way? Is this a legendary weapon? I believe in the original game it actually says, it's said that no one can wield it but Sephiroth. So it's like, okay, does that mean it's just really big and it's hard to swing? Or do you mean like physically cannot wield it? Because like Tifa picks it up but can't really use it. There's so many cool questions. So of course I got into the whole thing, which then pretty much came true in Ever Crisis, which is Sephiroth most likely got it from somebody in Wutai, like the Hector to his Achilles, and there's got to be some drama there and everything. So I really hope we get at least hints like that you and I can unpack as the game comes out. But I think there's going to be some really interesting connections to his sword, his power, how that links to the Whispers, and everything like that.
Well, actually, to kind of just jump off of that point, so
yeah, let's do it.
Again, it's hard to unpack like a 5-hour video, and I'm trying my best to just kind of consolidate. But we have we've already kind of talked in this conversation about like red and blue.
Yeah.
But in that Ever Crisis stuff that you were just talking about, they also show like white and black through like the feather association.
Totally.
You have like angels and devil sort of association right away. But in the rest of the compilation, mostly Sephiroth is associated with like a black wing.
Right.
Whereas in Ever Crisis, he has the white one. So clearly, like kind of like what you're implying is that not only will maybe like Sephiroth gain the Masamune, right? Masamune, but he might also go through a very serious character change as well, because at that point, and how like Nomura and everybody's been describing it is that he's a pure boy. He hasn't been tainted by the world yet, or like there hasn't been that sort of corrupted sort of mindset that we have seen sort of make him into what we know he will be.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that will align.
Yeah. Well, no, I was gonna say I love the idea of someone being the most powerful person on Earth, essentially, but it doesn't mean that they would be used to war and killing people. All right. So it's in that original trailer for Ever Crisis, he says like, he's talking about saving people and everything, and it was like, oh man, what an interesting twist, right? And then of course he's gonna realize that you can't save everybody. He has to make a choice whose lives are worth and more. And like, no matter how powerful you have or what powers you possess, like you can't, just be birthed with like, a mental state that can deal with that stuff. So it's cool.
I do feel like in ways like you're describing, I agree that it is about the sort of like making a choice aspect of it, and I hate to say it, and I know that this is like everyone avoids saying it, but Star Wars sort of has the beat on this a bit with like Anakin Skywalker and Sephiroth.
Oh, definitely, it's so similar. Like the fallen hero.
Prequels, it's some prequel stuff, and I hate to say it like that, but it's some prequel stuff where it feels like
you're in the right house, man. I love the prequels. You're in the right house.
Okay. So my point was to say that Anakin has a fear of death, which is why he turns to the dark side, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
It also seems like there is some sort of recurring aspect of that in Sephiroth and just the story of what we're experiencing in Rebirth, specifically, and Remake, where and in Ever Crisis, it's sort of highlighted where Sephiroth's like, why are they going to throw their lives away? He can't rationalize this sort of like belief in like this is just the way that things are, and this thought is so key to Sephiroth because his whole mentality, his villain arc, like him doing what he's doing, is he is going to recreate the world sort of in his image. Like he is so far into the denial of death that in the OG he tries to remake a world, and then in AC he completely rejects even being absorbed. This is where the lore comes in, where
his will is too strong,
absorbed by the live stream. Yes, his will is too strong, and then so this imagery of death is sort of clung to Sephiroth for such a long time, but it also feels like that's what's new about him too, kind of going into this is why this imagery is scary to me, because it's not that Sephiroth is the embodiment of death in the same way. Actually, this is a cute parallel here, I think, but with the new song that was just announced for it being like the Rebirth theme of No Promises to Keep. I think Nobuo Uematsu was talking about how Aerith was humanized to him through making that song, where she kind of was like a symbol of something to him.
I saw that interview.
After writing it, he like resonated with her as like a person, and I think that's what makes this new Sephiroth so scary.
Totally. And he also said that he really found that she's quite strong, Aerith. He said in the original that she was quite fragile when he wrote her theme. It has a fragility to it, and that's why it's so tragic, right? She's a human who has to do something that's, the divine realm, like beyond human capability, and has to
that sort of strength, that inner strength that we have seen very prominently too in like Remake and like in like the Hojo sequences and stuff like that, where you're just like, she is saving face right now. She is really putting on like this image of like trying to hold back, which, by the way, like the fact that she has maintained sanity and been interacting with Hojo for how long, who knows how that's possible.
Wild. But this is a perfect point. So you already started doing it. Let's go. Let's talk about the song. Let's talk about what it means. Let's talk about Aerith, and of course the end of that trailer. My thought is essentially this. Like you said, her sort of inner strength is that, she has to do something that is very like self-sacrificing, essentially. And no matter what her knowledge level is of like what she has to do, and if she has to die to do that and everything, we don't know exactly for now. I think we might know in Rebirth, but it's so cool. And I think Aaliyah really did a deep dive because she's been playing the music and loves the song. She's been playing on piano and singing it, and we love the song. And me and her pretty much agreed on this. She brought it up. It's like, I think the song, if you look at the lyrics,
I'm so stoked.
it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. And a lot of people are like, awesome. Obviously we see the gold saucer date, which everybody's so hyped about, right? The gold saucer dates, Aerith, Tifa, Barret, like we're probably going to get a Vincent date. It's going to be the best thing ever. So, and I'm sure all the dates are going to be amazing, like equally amazing. But in the song itself, we see the images of Cloud and Aerith, and then at the end we see Aerith and Zack, and then we hear Marlene talk about Aerith waking up. There's so much interesting stuff going on here. But what Aaliyah said is a really good point. It's like she's talking about meeting again in the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think the song's about Zack.
It is. Right? I think 100% wholesale. It's about Zack and Aerith. Whereas I think Hollow is maybe Zack's perspective. And then Aerith's perspective is this new song. So I think that we could see this sort of building of this reuniting, but like maybe like, fate, the twisted fate of like her being like, unconscious in Zack's sort of time, let's say. And then like not being able to see her in the church, which we see, it's just kind of, but I will say, because I think that it's funny because it didn't hit me right away from listening to the song.
Yeah.
And there's an article about this now that came out afterwards, and I was just so caught up in the swell of like, oh my God, there's Sid,
me too.
there's Vincent.
we
oh my
lost
God.
our minds. Yeah. We lost our minds.
Who can dissect this when there's just so much stuff to like that I'm just super stoked about. But afterwards, so the play in which Aerith is singing the song is an adaptation, it seems like, of Loveless.
Of Loveless,
specifically. And I will say
smart.
The one thing about it, the original text from Crisis Core is that the sort of the summary of it is that the two lovers in the story part, and even though a promise isn't made, that one day they will be reunited.
Yeah,
and if you guys know the rest of the story for Loveless, just in general, is that the last page of that is missing.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of what happens is not something that is written or known to anybody. So that unknown sort of journey,
that's
how
us.
this this reuniting happens, seems really strange. But I do want to say, and I think that this is really cool, and I actually haven't had a chance to really like talk about it yet, so we'll talk about it here. Is that we also saw Jesse. We saw Jesse.
We did.
And
what's going on with Jesse? Let's hear it. Let's hear it from you.
In the Golden Saucer, but I don't think that she's necessarily like alive, right? But I will say that we do know that she has a background in this play of some kind. But we actually saw a lot of stuff in Remake that kind of is setting up this like whole Loveless kind of involvement, like because listen to me, I didn't realize that we were going to get a Loveless theme song, and I've been talking about Loveless forever, so I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually maybe a bigger deal than I thought. But
I think so too.
Jesse's room, there is a ticket slip or some kind of flyer.
On the dresser, I believe.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of this on this flyer, which stars Jessie, which she was the understudy for this, right?
Yeah.
Is called Her Highness's Slumber.
That's awesome. I didn't remember the exact wording of that. That's awesome.
It's Your Highness's Slumber. So where do we see Aerith, this girl who's sort of singing this main thing? She is like the role of the princess in this rendition of it. Where do we see Aerith with Zack in the trailer? She's asleep.
It's like Sleeping Beauty,
Exactly.
So cool.
So the idea is that at some point, and this is sort of how I'm sort of seeing it now, is that it just feels like, even though it's already been hinted at with like all of the Aerith stuff, the scene seems like it's happening, is that it just feels like she's just gonna wake up, and then like we're gonna get like this weird down the road middle thing where it's like she's gonna die. I know this is probably gonna upset a lot of people, but I'm like actually super stoked about it. Is that,
just word it very.
I know we're gonna get the death, but we're also going to get Aerith sort of like reawakening / rebirth. It feels like that's sort of this.
Here's the thing,
focus.
though. The only thing is, I thought the same exact thing. I was like, oh, what if she dies then wakes up? But Marlene says she's gonna wake up then get murdered if she wakes up. So it's like,
if she wakes up.
Wait. So there's something there that's super interesting. It could be, maybe it's when she like reaches her in tune prayer level, white materia prayer level with the planet. She'll like wake up or something. We don't know what that means. But I will say, I'm going to shout out Baby Seal, who's in the chat right now, because I picked this up from a Baby Seal video. It was his accurate translation or sort of translation of the English subtitles on this very trailer. And at the end, a lot of people were like, oh, Aerith is asking Cloud for his strength in the way that Sephiroth asked Cloud to lend him his strength. She's actually praying. She's saying, planet, please lend me your strength. So, of course, that is the dialogue that's in the prayer scene. And something this instantly brought up for me is it's an idea that actually Subtext was talking about on Twitter the other day. Something that I mentioned in a previous conversation was I really hope we see Aerith, we see her perspective after Cloud assaults her and beats her up, she leaves the party, and she goes to the Forgotten City alone for a lot of different reasons, I'm sure, because she fears for her safety with Cloud being, you know, possessed by Sephiroth, but also she has to go and do this thing. And like the sort of drama that's there is so rich. Like she has to go and pray alone. She's probably feeling horrible after what happened. She's alone. She has to completely. It's like Frodo, man. It's like Frodo has to take the ring on his own and leave the Fellowship, right? It's the same exact
100%.
thing. Like she has to take all the weight on her own and say, okay, Cloud's compromised. I'm alone now. It's so tragic. So what's going through her head? And I love that we heard that line. I think we might actually get a window into her prayer. I think that'd be the coolest thing ever. And I really, really hope, as I've said before, that we get a Sephiroth and Aerith scene. We kind of got it on the highway and remake, but we really need these two, like, you know, chthonic forces up against each other, you know, of the planet. And I think it'd be so cool to have some sort of confrontation between them. And I highly suspect that, well, okay, let's do it like this. Let's get both of our ideas on this because it's a discussion. I'll say, what do you think is going to happen after that shot in the trailer? Because if you pause play the last couple frames, it starts to pan up. After that feather comes.
I was looking at that. I was like, oh shit.
I was literally like, oh,
here he goes.
No. It's coming down. The feather comes down. She looks up, same exact shot as the trailer. I compared the two, and then zoop, we shoot up to Sephiroth. So what's going on in the shot? Is it a premonition? Is it something that we see like in an earlier scene? Is it something that's happening at the right in the moment when from Cloud's perspective? I'll hear what you think first, and then I'll give you my theory.
So I have gone on record to say this in other streams, but I think that because this is because of the shot, dude, I think that we're going to be playing into her death quite frequently in Rebirth. I think
it's clearly been set up as a is this going to happen because of the thing Marlene says and everything. So it's like it's kind of cool in that way.
They're just gonna keep hammering this in.
A premonition,
just like exactly a Cloud premonition, 100%. I think that a lot of people are saying Nibelheim. We're gonna start off with like a Nibelheim flashback. I almost feel like if we're gonna get like an intro cutscene like before anything happens, I feel like they're just gonna show us the scene like right off the bat, and then we're gonna see Cloud wake up and be like, oh, okay, well, Sephiroth is tormenting me with the thought that this is about to happen, and then you're just like, oh my god, this is, and then I don't know, so I keep flip-flopping on whether it will actually happen or not. I really think that now with this other sort of Aerith in play, there will be some sort of like reawakening thing happening. So I think whether she dies at the altar, and I know that this might sound maybe reductive of that moment, but it feels like it could go either way there, and it's still going to pan out in another way later. So now they've introduced so many different things happening that it's like, will her death matter here in the way that it mattered back then? Is it going to turn into a whole other scenario? Will Cloud save her? I'm not sure. I'm going to just say it. I don't feel confident in any of those answers yet.
Yeah. Well, you got to look at it like this too. A lot of people have said like, if she was to, you know, reawaken and stuff, it would diminish. I mean, in the original, she reawakens. She's literally in the live stream and is like controlling and making stuff happen at the end. That's confirmed. And, you know, Sephiroth, sort of the beauty of the story is that he undoes himself by destroying Aerith. Right. And that's what makes it so cool and so awesome. It's like the one, you know, a non-threat, I'll just wipe this person out, is what destroys him. Right. It's so fascinating. But I think there's a lot of possibilities. What instantly comes to mind is you talked about the sort of bait of this moment. So it could be a lot of things. It could be like Cloud, by having a premonition or having fearing that this is going to happen so much, he inadvertently causes it. I think that'd be really cool too. Because as we know, Cloud is actually the one who almost kills her. Like I said, after he attacks her and beats her in the original, in the altar, he's got the Buster Sword up. He's about to swing down. He's winding up to kill Aerith himself. He doesn't do it. And then Sephiroth, you know, or, a Genova piece controlled by Sephiroth says, all right, I'll do it myself. So maybe they could do a twist on that. Maybe it almost like reverses, right? What if Sephiroth doesn't kill her? Maybe something like Zack stops Sephiroth from killing her.
Happens, right?
And then
exactly.
Cloud
Somebody comes in and is like, no.
Yeah,
right.
and maybe Cloud attacks her, right? So there could be a lot of cool switch like that. Maybe he causes it.
Ooh, let him cook, Khaleesi.
It's not as straightforward anymore, where it's like,
No.
okay, it's just Cloud. We know that Cloud is like overtaken by Sephiroth mentally, like, and he's prone to doing all sorts of stuff. And then it's just Sephiroth, and it's like, okay, if Cloud doesn't do it, then Sephiroth's just gonna step in and just finish it off, and that's gonna be that.
Yeah.
Now it's like you have Zack, you have
a lot of factors
that
at
are
play.
supposed to prevent everything, and then who knows what's gonna happen in the next one. I will say this, and this is something I am absolutely definitive about, is that I like to think about things in the sense of the thematic structure of these two different worlds. And I do think that now that we have heard some of Sephiroth's dialogue about worlds merging, is that this one world represents life, from what we know from developer commentary about both of the two universes that we see at the very end of Remake. So one is life and one is death. I think that both are true, if that makes sense. Her being alive in one world makes sense, and her being dead in another makes sense. But the unity of those worlds and how they come together, and then what happens then.
Yes.
Which, by the way, to me, this is where like developer commentary and like whether or not this game will be the same. I do feel like there's honesty there about the game relatively being the same game. I think, though, that when people think, oh, yeah, it's going to be the same game, I think the way in which the new stuff is told and how that integrates with the way that we know it, it will just happen differently. So
yeah,
I think
I agree.
that when the worlds merge, whatever happens to Aerith will most likely be the way things were meant to be in the original game. So maybe she doesn't die on the altar the same way she dies in the original, but she definitely has to die.
yeah. Well, she has to die for like the story to have any DNA of what it was. I mean, I'm sure there's a way you could try and redo the entire thing, but then other things have to get moved around so much to like make it make sense. It's just like, I don't know why they would do it. But there could be another reason I haven't thought of, right? That they're imagining. But yeah, I mean, they've said time and time again, it's gonna link up to Advent Children's canon. So it's like, okay, well, Aerith is no longer with us in Advent Children, right? So, I mean, I think it could be really cool if, like I said, something stops him from striking. I mean, I would love to just see the scene too. I think that'd be great. But I could also see him like.
I really wanted to see the full-blown CGI trailer uninterrupted. Right. I just want to see that play out and like be able to use that footage too.
Yeah, same. I would love to see it because it's an iconic scene, right? But I could easily see them doing, she gets a sort of like extension on life. But what I would like to see is, I kind of talked about this before, her realizing if this is in fact Aerith from any sort of, premonition powers Aerith, which I think she still had in the original. Personally, I think she knew she had to do this. That's my headcanon on it. So I think they're going to expand on that idea in this, and that's what makes her so tragic. Right, she sees Zack and Cloud, so of course she's like, oh, it reminds me of my first love, and and of course then she realizes, oh, I don't get to be a normal person, I don't get to have a life. That's what makes Aerith such an awesome character, such a tragic character. She doesn't get to be a normal human. She has to do this like calling that is essentially, speak with the planet from within it, and it's so sad, but she saves the world. So I think what's so cool is, imagine if she resolves herself to do this. Like, I have to die, essentially, like on from her perspective. Cloud tries to stop her somehow. The party tries to stop her. Zack tries to stop her, whatever it is. And then, maybe there's a moment after like Sephiroth gets stopped with that stab or something, where she has this moment of like, maybe I can be a normal person. Maybe I can just have a happy life. And then it's like, maybe everything's gonna go to hell. Maybe like she has a new premonition of the future. Meteor just hits and destroys the entire Earth of Gaia. maybe something else happens, maybe the other party's in danger, and then she says, yeah, what a daydream that was. I have to do this. And then she like self-sacrifices or something. That would be so powerful, right? In a similar way. And it would give her more sort of like agency over the decision. But I think it'd be cool if maybe she just like attacks Sephiroth knowing she probably can't beat him or something. So I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities there.
That scene particularly was something that I actually really like. I championed for a while, not at the altar, but at the Cosmo Canyon, the fire scene where they're all sitting around, and sort of talking. If you talk to Aerith there, it really feels like it's the one scene where her mask of, you know, that sort of like that strength has loosened considerably. And it's just because she's talking about like the Cetra with all these people. Yeah. And she's like, I really am the last one. And like, you can feel the weight of responsibility is like heavily weighing on her there. But also just this profound like sadness that is, that Cloud in that particular moment can't do anything to change because he is completely out of his depth. And I think that this is the strength of Aerith in Rebirth and her sort of role that she kind of started to represent more symbolically in like AC, but has now become like more humanized because we've seen the mask slip so many times. Yeah. Even with like just the small scenes that we've seen so far. I think Aerith is going to die in the way that we know like she's going to be comforting the people, not herself. And she's going to be so outwardly focused on, if like Zack is there, it's going to be Zack. And if Cloud is there too, it's going to be Cloud. And we're just going to see her just go away. And then that's that, leaving off on that note, knowing what you're talking about, I think is going to resonate so much more profoundly with people, just because it's like the details, the reading between the lines, I think. And granted, Remake has not done the greatest job of that in certain instances of like, this is subtle. But like, I feel like if you're going to handle that death, you got to give us just that, like that want. We want her to like spill her guts out that moment, but it's like, might not be Aerith.
That's what I'm talking about. So I would love to see, like, there's so much sort of storytelling potential there, and you just touched on it. It's what I was talking about with the, you know, a person who's so strong, especially if she is an oracle and she has knowledge of the planet, she knows what she has to do, to have that sad daydream, that tragic daydream. It's like, maybe I could just, you know, have a happy life, and then to have it like that sadness of that, but then to realize, almost like Yuna at the scene where her and Titus kiss, amazing scene. She's just like has this daydream. Do you remember that with Titus? You played 10, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. With Titus,
seen a lot of 10.
Okay, yeah. So like, yeah.
I know about it.
There's this amazing scene where he's like, "You don't have to do this. You don't have to go and fight sin." And she's like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, we could do this. Let's travel the world. Let's do all this stuff.
Let's just do the stuff that we've been talking about."
And it's like,
that is a sad scene.
It's so tragic. And the whole time, the player, of course, you don't want her to die. So you're like, yes, this is awesome. They're not gonna do it. They're gonna do something. And then, like during this amazing daydream, like she just starts crying because she's like realizing, I'll never do that. Like it's a nice thought, but that's
like, it's just a daydream her partaking in that makes her profoundly sad.
Exactly. And then
in the horrible way. And then he
imagine
her,
that.
and then they have this real moment though. And that's what they find in in the dream is the genuine connection.
Yeah. And that's humanity. That's humanity. And I personally wouldn't want to see Aerith just be like a perfect, you know, sort of like angelic force, which is kind of what they did in Advent Children. And a lot of people didn't like it. It's kind of like perfect angelic force that's just like, well, it makes more sense in Advent Children, but, you know, just kind of like no feelings or anything. And then so I would love to see that sort of drama unplayed, no matter how they do it. I think there's a million possibilities. I had another idea as you were talking too. Imagine if you know, the party just like literally saves Aerith in that moment. Like everybody shows up, Vincent flies down with his weapon, and like Sid does dragoon jump, everybody's there, Cloud's like defending, and they're like, we saved her. this is awesome. And it's like, yeah, we're safe. And then there's this moment of like, oh, you don't realize how powerful Sephiroth is, do you? And it could be this terrifying moment of like, oh, you guys are all insignificant compared to him. And he just eliminates everybody, just like deletes them all, and then has like full reign to do whatever he wants. That could be terrifying. I really want them to make it scary.
I think you have the right idea, because, and this is also, I'll follow you down this road, because I think this is the perfect time to set up, because they set it up in Remake, is that if you're really going to go for like, because we're in the middle, right? We're not at the end. Like Sephiroth isn't like, I don't even think that we know remotely with like what the fuck we're dealing with yet. But I think we're going to become very aware of like just how present and controlling Sephiroth is over the situation very quickly. So in Remake, we saw the power of unity and coming together at the very end. I know that this might not be a popular opinion just because it's like Sephiroth can't be the villain twice in a row for like the final boss. Maybe he isn't, but maybe for this moment it kind of makes sense. Is that power coming together is sort of the end fight with Sephiroth in Remake. I would love to see the party dwindle down, and then you just keep feeling that sort of like, so maybe you start fighting Sephiroth with like all of your party, and then the next phase you like lose party members, and then it's maybe just like a couple people, and then it's just like,
so it's the opposite.
Okay, now it's just Cloud. Now it's just Cloud fighting him, and you're just like, oh my god, he's so fucked. Like totally. Just that feeling of action, because I think Sephiroth feels he feels threatening, but I think making him feel as threatening as the original and more so would be a really good angle to take with this next game. I want to feel
I agree.
Super like, and this again is what they've been strengthening, is all these characters sort of like the humanity aspect of them. Sephiroth could feel really scary if you just like start to demonstrate just how much he's just been playing around with the situation.
Yes, and this is what people need to understand, is in Ever Crisis, he's a kid, and there's this genius scene where like Glenn, there's like a rocket, a missile that goes by his head, and Glenn really goes like this and looks back, and like 20 people are dead in that moment. In that moment that he went, a rocket, and so you don't even see it, and they all just fall down, and there's like 10-foot deep like troughs in the ground where his sword cut through, and it's like, that's when he was a kid. So how strong is Sephiroth at this point, when he has like kind of embraced his, extra powers and everything? And I really hope they show the sort of terrifying, they kind of did it for a second in Remake, when, because as we know, he was going easy on that fight, but there's a moment where he just goes like, when he gets the wing and just slams everybody down to the ground, like they can't even move, and it's like, oh my god, I want to see more stuff like that and kind of play into the terror of it,
Absolutely.
That would be awesome.
I also had a thought randomly while we were talking, because we were talking about slumbering with Aerith. That makes a lot more sense for how Remake even starts. Yeah. Because her eyes opening, as in she like awakens. So like maybe she wasn't present just then, and then we have these future memories, Aerith, like appearing in this world, which is what a lot of people already made the like connection to, but then that would be far more relevant when we see her waking up later in this new rebirth, like, other world. Totally. I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many, there's like the sleeping, the awakening part, Sephiroth saying like to Cloud, like dream like the sweetest dreams. I'm just like, there's so much being played around with this, and also just the literal like dreams and honor phrase
totally
they use in Crisis Core. It all is so, but here's the thing is that, and this is always what boggles my mind when like Nomura just starts whatever it is that he's creating. It's like, no, these things are quite literal. It always feels like I'm not being literal enough when I'm looking at these themes, because same thing with like the world of white and the world of like pure black, like all of these things that were talked about in like, the script for Advent Children, where you have like a white life stream and a black life stream. And then it's like they mention that there's a world of white, and then you're just like, what? Like, what does
What
that
does that
mean?
mean? Yeah.
What does a world of white mean? And that's the space that Aerith and everybody's standing in, that white space. And then
Yeah.
you have Sephiroth standing in this void in remake
And he
when he's
like
talking to
commands it,
Cloud in his
and
thoughts.
Advent Children too. He like commands this like
Yes.
Maelstrom to like
And
swirl
then
around. It's like, what is this?
yeah, exactly. What's happening? And then you're at the end of remake, and he's like, "Yeah, these are two worlds." And I was like, "Well, okay. There's only two worlds that we know about right now, which are these
Yeah.
two worlds that are depicted through this theme of color correlation." And then now we're injecting like this sort of dreamlike thing. It's just
Yeah,
it's just
Professor
a nut.
Noctis just said it in chat. Like it's very reminiscent of Versus 13. The idea of like, dreams and sleeping and Noctis's sort of, powers and how that relates to it, which we'll never know exactly, but could be carrying over here a little bit. And we know Nomura's fascination with that. So no, there's so many possibilities, but I would love to see, there's a moment where it's like, we think we won. And then Sephiroth is like, oh wait, you thought I was like trying it all. Like that would be so scary,
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's got to be like the way that this story ends, because I don't think it's just going to be like Meteor shows up.
Yeah.
And that's going to make us feel like we're all hope is lost. We've already felt that, and I think it's the same thing with Aerith's death. Here actually a perfect example of this, because I think I was trying to explain this before, and I realized this because I was watching somebody play the Junon section.
Yeah.
For the original, and they were like, in the context of the OG, somebody's like, "There's a black-cloaked figure like walking around. There's a man in a black cloak like walking around, like." And we know in the context of that from the OG, that's Sephiroth. That's a Sephiroth clone or something like walking around. But in Rebirth, we see a dude in a black cloak walking around.
Yeah, literally.
And that's not a Sephiroth clone. That's not what we understand in the context of the original game. That's some new shit.
Yeah, it looks
whoever that dude is, that's not normal. So like
totally.
The way that I feel they're looking at like the remake aspect of this is that, okay, yes, Aerith dies like as a beat from the original, but how that happens, how that works out, you will not know until it happens.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the same. The world is doomed is the end of the arc of that sort of like that. I feel like we're all kind of feeling we're going to arrive in at the end of Rebirth, which in the original is the meteor showing up. In the Rebirth version of that is going to be, oh, like that's not meteor at all. That's some whole other situation.
Ooh, yeah.
That is completely different than what I remember it to be. So when you're sitting there describing this as like a beat by beat scenario, it's the same.
Totally.
But when you actually look at it and you're experiencing it and you're like, oh my God, like Zack showed up in like this thing, it's not going to be the same. It's going to be like this wildly different retelling of it. I don't know how mad people are going to be about that. I really hope that, and I sort of rationalized this recently. I don't know if you've seen it, but and I know I'm rambling.
Please.
Have you seen the Scott Pilgrim anime? I'm not going to spoil anything.
No, I haven't.
But
it's okay. You can spoil me though.
I'm not going to do it for the chat. I'm not going to do it.
Oh, okay.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it gave me a very particular perspective on just an addition when you're looking at games like this, because I feel like a lot of people are just like, this is terrible. Why are they doing this? The whispers. I have found in my heart that what is something that I truly desire from certain media sometimes is to see how characters are from a different perspective than I originally understand them to be. So I think as long as we continue down this road, and if it is new, that's great. I'm fine with that. But even if it's just slightly different and we end up in the same place, that's also okay with me, because for me, what I want to see more than anything else out of the remake is different sides of the characters that I've never gotten to see. sort of like what you're talking about with like Aerith, like having that moment where it's like I can kind of buy into this thing. I think what I keep thinking to myself about remake is that these characters are so good, and I'm so glad that they're being remade, and I'm so glad that we're getting more dialogue from them. I really just want to keep seeing them interact in these really weird ways. Like I was talking about this with Subtext recently. Shout out to the Subtext. He's got a new video out. You should go check that out. It's really good.
Yes.
We were talking, and there's something that like Tifa, I think, has a particular view of like things aren't black and white. Like Shinra is filled with people that are just like regular people. They're just coming to a 9-to-5 job, and they're not like aware of like the insane like impact that this company is doing, or they're just trying to get by, So she has that sort of like gray in her mind of like, this is what this is sort of about. It's not so easily defined by just one bad, one good. And I was also thinking that another character that has that perspective is Kate Sith.
Yeah, you're right.
And I was thinking to myself, because as we know, Kate Sith is Reeve, and he's working from the inside, trying to change things for the better from within the system that he's working in. And this is a guy who's like doing it the way that, rational, mind is like, oh, well, if I can just go into this company and do the right thing,
make it better.
Maybe I can make it better.
Yeah.
And this is a conversation. I was like, I cannot wait to have a conversation where like Kate Sith is like, we know where Kate Sith morally stands in this subject, and Tifa morally stands in this subject. It's like, no, actually this terrorism thing isn't working out, and we're like, our friends are dead, right?
Yeah,
like all these horrible things have happened. But then on the other side, it's like Barret is like hasn't dealt with his issues yet. Like he doesn't realize that this is all like coping of like stuff that has happened to him. That's where all of this anger is coming from. Like all of this is gonna play out, and it's like I just want them to thoroughly exhaust all of these interactions. So I don't care how it happens. Or where it
That's
happens.
what I'm saying. Like imagine, I mean, we already have seen a little preview of Barrett's backstory in the trailer, and it looks fantastic.
God, dude.
That's gonna hurt. I feel like that might be the most hurtful part of the game, which is saying a lot for the stuff that's coming, but that's gonna be rough. And also
you really like made Dine like super like oof. I really felt like, oh god, like this guy's like he's broken down, man. Dine is broken down, and he's breaking down in front of us, and I was just like, this is the best that this could possibly be.
I mean, that line in the trailer, it gave me chills. It's like he looked so much pain and so far gone. It's like, imagine that feeling. You don't even want your daughter to know that you exist because you're so like far gone. And
you're just out.
Chills, man. Chill. And it actually in the Japanese, again, shout out to Baby Seal and his other translation. The subtitle was like, "Damn you, Barret! Like, why would you tell me that Marlene's alive?" And it's like, oh, that hurts even more too.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's gonna be
every translation difference too is always just like, this feels just like added to the context of like the English dub. It's just like more juicy information,
Totally. Yeah, it's great. It's great. But no, I'm looking forward to it. And like I said, imagine Aerith, in that moment of saying like having a daydream, saying like, what am I doing? I have like a greater calling. So it would hit so hard. But I we'll move on in a second, but I really hope they explore all that and whatever that moment holds. But I mean, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about other stuff, unless you want to keep going down the character hole. There's a lot of stuff there. I mean, what other scenes?
I was thinking that the one thing I had like left in my mind, because we were talking about translation stuff. One of the things I was super interested in, and I can't make sense of this. I'm going to just be honest. This is just sort of like a random regurgitated thought that I had during the trailer, watching the translation of it, was Zack says in the English version, "I can feel every bullet." And then in the Japanese translation,
something very different.
He talks about a wind, like a gust of wind. And
the whispers.
The thing about it,
perhaps?
is that it does. I know that like whispers are emulated as like a gust of wind or like some force that is pushing people if you can't see them. So that makes sense. But the first thing that actually came to my mind was there is a scene where you defeat the Harbinger and the party is engulfed in like this white light.
Yeah.
And then they transfer to the scene where that then eventually becomes the scene where you fight Sephiroth. But I just remember the one thing that I am not seen in any version of this white background depiction is it's windy, and you hear the wind. You hear the wind, blowing like the water and like just like the end. Like it's a whole mood. But the thing that always stood out to me about that scene is that in Advent Children we see the world of white. We see it like plenty of times there. We see it a little bit, I think, in Remake, theoretically, and then we see it for sure there. And I was like, why is it windy? And then I think to myself, actually, there is quite a bit of that in Loveless too, because it talks about the wind all the time.
The water surface,
the water surface, and it says no matter which way the wind blows. To me, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, so now we have linked, this idea that the concept of wind to the whispers, to fate, to destiny, as they're already connected, and then they're already connected to Loveless in this way. And then it's like, was this all like just figured out like a long time ago, and am I just like experiencing the story again? And it feels like so purposeful. And I've never talked about the wind aspect of it because honestly I hadn't thought about it, but it feels like the reason I'm bringing this up is because it doesn't feel like that act that happens with Cloud and the party is a whisper thing. That's what was throwing me off about this thought. As I was thinking about it, I was like, we see the whispers show up like right after, and we see them full-fledged, so you would think that like if it was the whispers that sort of transported the party, then that would be different, right? But we don't see them, and then we just see like these little gusts of wind, these little trails of wind sort of surrounding the party. I'm like, what is there a different force? Is this Aerith? I don't know. It was just a thought that I had, but I just was thinking to myself about this. This is obviously, again, I don't have a conclusion to the thought.
No, it's a great thought, though. It's fascinating to look into. Aaliyah says, from what I hear about the Barret dying scene, I will buy extra tissues. Yeah, you're going to have to. Yeah, you're going to have to. But no, I think you make a great point. I mean, one of my favorite things that you talked about in your 5-hour video was, or was this in your older video? Actually, maybe I'm confusing the two. But yeah, you talk about legacy a lot, and like the idea of kind of like Angel and everything, and it's one of my favorite pieces that you've done. But I love how Rebirth and Remake are kind of like they're taking the legacy of FF7, which has like evolved far beyond the original game now, and the Final Fantasy series has evolved far beyond FF7 now, and they're like combining the legacy of everything that's come back into FF7 to kind of make it this magnum opus. And like it's so cool. For example, the song No Promises to Keep, Aerith singing, and at the Gold Saucer, and apparently other people are probably going to sing too. I'd like to hear Barrett's version. Yeah.
Do you think that we're going to get a different song for each of the characters?
I think what we might do is get different singers for each rendition. That could be really cool, because we know, like, for example, Barret sings all the time, so it'd be really fun if he oh
my god, if John Bentley actually sings the whole thing. I'd be so down. I'm not even joking.
Yeah. I was just saying earlier in the stream that Aaliyah plays, she's playing on piano like day and night. But yeah, imagine if we get like either it's John Bentley, the legend, he's a good singer, or we get him on there, or it's like somebody else singing, who knows. But anyways, it's so cool, like the legacy. So the legacy of Final Fantasy, what comes after 7 is 8, 9. Of course, we think about the play in Final Fantasy 9 and the sort of like showmanship of that, and I think the opera from FF6. So they're like taking the legacy of Final Fantasy and kind of like putting, what Final Fantasy kind of known for now is these performances and kind of like, lore of the game Like I want to be your canary, and then okay, lore of Loveless. Let's use Loveless. We have an awesome play here. Let's do it. And I think it's just so clever. But I wanted to ask you if you want to talk about any of that sort of awesome legacy type thought that you talked about in your video, and how maybe that might apply to what's going on in Rebirth, even with Zack in Cloud, considering like the 2 Buster Swords, if there is 2. I think there's probably still 1, but what do you guys think? What's gonna happen?
I do think, though, like in that sense, just to answer the question flat out, I think there are 100% just 2 different Buster Swords, and I think
Awesome, yeah.
the idea of legacy is super important because, and actually, it really plays into something that we've been talking about, which you brought up a couple times already, which is that the side of legacy completely is explained through the idea of monsters and humanity. Which is something that Crisis Core sort of like defines very clearly, that if you're a monster, you are sort of associated with like negative feelings, and if you want like the quickest way to ingest that without going into every single connection, you can just think about it as like the dark side of the Force. It just makes it the easiest way to explain it. And then humanity is the light side, the force of good. This is super, because this is a topic of conversation that's been circulating, is that Aerith says, "Oh, planet, lend me your strength."
Yeah.
This is a definitive part of humanity in general in Final Fantasy VII, is that it is about the collective movement of time, of how things happen. The cycle of life is life, death, and rebirth, and all souls collectively contribute to the way that the planet evolves, to the rebirth of new life, to everything. And this is like both planetary, it's individual based, it's planetary based, it's like in the solar system. This is just the way that the world works, and it also goes into like literal the spiritual way that we interact with things. This is like the deepest of the lores here when it comes to that. But that's completely encapsulated by what Aerith says about asking the planet for strength. Is she's asking everyone to help her, all of these souls, to lend her strength.
Yeah.
Sephiroth is defined by the singular, is that it is not about the collective, it is about the I. Which is why when he changed, because in the compilation he sort of addresses himself as Watashi, which is sort of like a blanket,
it's like a very
disassociated in
detached
terms of the context of him, not necessarily the word itself like blanket wise, but in this rendition of Sephiroth. But at the edge of creation, he's using Ore, which is I. It's the humanity aspect of him. But the way that they're still depicting this sort of individual mindset is that he is asking Cloud for strength. Which, as if we know anything about the connection between these characters, is that Sephiroth is pretty much the shadow of Cloud, for a lack of a better term, is that he is intrinsically linked to all of what makes Cloud fearful of everything. Like all of his darkest parts of him are what Sephiroth uses to gain strength and control over Cloud. So they're in a lot of ways one and the same person, inhabiting sort of the same space together. So for me, when you talk about legacy, is that the legacy is defined by the idea of humanity, sort of the way that I sort of already described this sort of planetary function, the way that people are selfless, like Zack, where he wants to be a hero and help others, and like, be a hero. Sephiroth is a hero in the opposite way, where he is the strongest. There is no other that stands with Sephiroth. He is unbeatable, he is unmatched, and he is other and completely secluded because of that.
There's a loneliness there too.
Yes, exactly. So because there's no one, there's just him. So with legacy, Zack's selflessness leads to him passing on the legacy of his sort of humanity, his beliefs, the way that he is, to Cloud. That's what creates Cloud. And and that's sort of just, again, sort of the idea of humanity is
I
that
do a lot of push-ups and
life
sit-ups,
grows, it doesn't
and
matter
I
if you
drink
survive or
plenty
not.
of juice.
It's about the continuation of this thing of life, even in death. And for Sephiroth, it's like, no, I just want to keep surviving. I kind of just want to not ever, die ever. So when he's talking about his legacy or his form of legacy, it is about preserving himself in some idea or way through Cloud, but like not melding into the life stream, but retaining self, retaining everything that he was. So the lack of growth, almost in some ways, is what describes Sephiroth. But this new Sephiroth, again, sort of seemingly is embracing. There's a great line that they released for Sephiroth where he says, "It's not death, it's a homecoming."
Yeah.
And that line scares the shit out of me.
Yes, definitely. That's a terrifying thing to hear. Yeah.
The fact that he has embraced this concept so full-heartedly is like, there's something terribly wrong with the way that he's representing himself.
Oh yeah, and listen, you got to remember, this is Sephiroth talking after he's already died.
Yes,
Cloud
exactly.
killed him.
He's like, this is like where we all exist, and this is how like things are gonna be. I feel like this is
So why wouldn't he be like, oh yeah, death is great. It's almost like Seymour from FF10. It's like, yeah, death is just the beginning. It's terrifying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think this is what makes this two world merging thing such because I think people are just like, what, planets merging? That seems like so radical and weird. It is, first of all, completely, but it also is contributing to the mindset that we're seeing with this new Sephiroth, where it's like, if these two worlds are represented by these two ideas of life and death, and they're coming together, and this is what Sephiroth wants, that means that whatever this plan is, it's not about Aerith dying. It's not about this. It's not about like these things happening in this particular way. It's about the collective of merging these two different places together that Sephiroth wants. I ultimately am gonna, and this is just a super shot in the dark.
Please.
I do feel like this is just a gunning towards what will ultimately be what we understand to be the promised land. I think that is the thing that, if we're going to simplify and sort of take from the OG, sort of like what we understand is that that's sort of what they summarize as what Sephiroth wants at the end of this. This is Sephiroth wanting the promised land. So in order to get to that, somehow these two worlds merging is going to reveal the path to a future where that is possible for him in some way.
That would be awesome. Also, I don't know why I just thought this when you were talking about that, is I think we really need to consider that, talking about legacy and everything. So Zack and Cloud had the same sort of treatment from Hojo when they were in the Nibelheim basement, correct?
Yes.
Right. So Zack, that means we never had to think about this before because he was dead. Now, I've thought this for a while, that like, Sephiroth, as we know, like kind of absorbs the whispers at the end. It was his plan to happen, whatever exactly happened. It was his plan. He also just like decided to let the party do that and, not use full strength. I've thought the whole time that Zack is if he's going to be utilized in some way, he's an instrument of Sephiroth. So the horrifying truth is that, of course, what happens to Cloud at the reunion? The Genova cells are able to be controlled. Zack has Genova cells. Zack is the most powerful living soldier other than Sephiroth, correct? Angeal's gone. Genesis is gone.
Right.
You see where I'm cooking here? So
is he
Zack,
gone?
well, maybe. Well, maybe. You know what I mean? He's right now,
he's indisposed.
He's currently out of the players on the chessboard, we'll say. He's just like in reserves. But you see my point, right? Zack is the one that Sephiroth said, ooh, I can use this. Let's let him live. So I can, when his Genova cells activate, control him. He has Genova cells, and he could be the one that kills Aerith as well for that reason. I've never heard anyone say that. It's usually Zack will save Aerith because he's going to show up. Zack has Genova cells. And we could, on the one hand say, oh, but he's really strong of will, and he's just like happy all the time and stuff. He's not going to get affected, but I don't know if that's really how the Genova cells work. So it would be super interesting to see maybe in that moment Zack gets controlled. So just something to think about.
It definitely is, because I think in general too, because soldier
up,
degradation
Mog?
is something that they're pushing. I know I was thinking the same thing. I was like, I can't help but say we're doing pretty good.
Yeah.
I just had an immediate want to respond to Koopa. I was like, I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think something that soldier degradation sort of introduces it from remake, and it's a concept from Crisis Core, but the way that it's sort of being outlined in remake is that the mind eventually deteriorates for soldiers, the way that President Shinra sort of lays it out. And at first, the reason why Zack isn't affected is because he is in the same way. Will is a very strong aspect of Final Fantasy VII's
Oh
world.
yeah.
Is that Zack is so true to himself that he is so him that he is unaffected by what essentially what Mako is, and this is what happens to people with Mako poisoning is that they are bombarded with like the essentially just too much knowledge, because Mako is literally the memories of the dead, the lifeblood of other souls. So like you're just getting this complete noisy mess to a point where you just lose yourself in it. This is what happens when you fall into the live stream. It happens to Cloud like 100 times.
Yeah.
The man has taken too much of a beating, but this is why Cloud loses himself at first during literally the same experiment. Is that Cloud is not sure of who he is, and that is the like quintessential id of what Cloud represents, that unsure character. So he gets lost. And the only thing that brings him back is literally adopting the persona of Zack, literally and figuratively. He like takes it. But I could definitely see something happening too. I really hope that that's always going to be the sore spot for me. Is that I really do hope that Zack's story pans out in a way that feels satisfactory. But specifically with what you're talking about is that it would be also nice to, because we've been talking about Sephiroth, who's also symbolic of like death, and where Aerith is symbolic of life. It would be nice to humanize Zack to a point where we can very easily relate to what it is that's going on with him. What is going on with like a low moment, I would say, maybe, and even ending on a low moment. What the fuck, and a low moment with Zack would be actually probably the best way to wrap up the midsection of the game. Is that Aerith is dead.
I mean, listen,
what the fuck is going on with the world?
It's The Empire Strikes Back, right? You can't. I mean, just because we always see, this is what I was saying before. People are just like, we get more Zack. I should say the Zack detractors will be like, man, Zack is just, he's always happy and stuff. He finally gets to be a deep character. Now we can develop Zack. So imagine like this Empire Strikes Back ending. We can't have Zack just being like, anyways, living the dream, hopes and dreams. Like, it's not going to happen, man. You see what I'm saying? What I said is,
he's crying his eyes out by the time that Aerith is dead. He's going to be done, dude.
He's going to be devastated. And you have to ask yourself, like, what is his journey going to be in FF7? We don't know. And maybe we'll figure it out very soon. I hope we do. But yeah, I think, it's going to be him definitely hitting a low. And that's an opportunity, because in Crisis Core, and again, I love Crisis Core. It's just, they didn't have the time. Like I always say, like in Sleep Easy's video, you'll see how much sort of like thematic roots are in this game, but they didn't have the time to explain it all, because it's like, it's a UMD. We can fit like, whatever, a couple hours cutscenes that cover like literally years upon years of story, tons of characters, all this stuff. And, they did great for the time they had with it, but I'm so excited to see Zack sort of unpacked more, and let's give him some really deep conflict of, what if I couldn't be a hero? Because he got to be a hero in Crisis Core. He sacrificed himself for a friend. What happens if he doesn't get to do that? What happens to Zack? So that's a good question.
I think you also brought up this thought again for me, which is that seeing Zack react to Aerith's death would be a really interesting window, because, and it depends, right? It depends, because in a lot of ways, Zack died sort of in the resolve of what his situation was once he started to pass. Like he's done.
Yeah.
He's done. Filled with bullets.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like here it is. Like there's no going forward. The only thing that can go forward is like what I believe in, and I'm gonna give that to Cloud. And I think in that moment it's like he has resolved himself to thinking about the world in that way, and to a degree they really did a good job with that scene, because there really is a lot going on there that I think, where if you complain about the rest of Crisis Core, fine, but like that scene really does the character sort of finality justice in a lot of ways. I think it would be super interesting to see how Zack has grown in that moment to get to that moment where Aerith dies, and how he experiences her loss.
Yeah.
And being open about it in a way that is, I want to see growth. I think that that's such a potential right there, to see the Zack that we know from Crisis Core to the way, because that's all that Crisis Core is about, is how Zack deals with death and how he comes to terms with that thought. And to have Aerith die potentially in front of him is going to be like, oh my God, like this guy's actually kind of changed, I think. And that's what's going to start changing the opinion about his characterization. This is where there's a pivot point for him. Totally. And starting to sort of like grow a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, listen, we're in the age, like Crisis Core is from an age of gaming and on a handheld. So like even, further back in that age, with limitations of like, I think this is why Rebirth is such a dream for true FF fans. And let me explain, like in that era, same thing with OGF, you had to imagine so much of the story, right? Like I've said it a million times. What does like Vincent and Yuffie talk about when they're on their travels? Nobody knows, right? Because it doesn't happen. What do they talk about when they just
crickets?
Right, exactly. When they're going through the world, what are these guys? No, they don't say anything. There is no story. Like there's so much that's just nothing that you had to make up in your head. So we all have our like headcanons and these things, and this is really why the shipping is so prevalent in FF7, is because there's so little that everybody like makes up a lot of the story in their heads of like what they wanted to happen, and that's why a lot of it is very enjoyable for people, right? And
I think definitely with now also just the on that same subject, it's like they obviously in Rebirth seem to be leaving a lot of room for you to explore with interactions you want.
Totally.
Like
expanding
with,
on it.
The Barret options, the like Barret singing John Bentley himself and Loveless is like that. You're gonna get to that moment and you're gonna be like, and then you're gonna see Cloud's eyes lighten up and you're gonna be like, oh my God, I love Barret. Like and that's really who's gonna die on the altar. You're gonna see Barret praying and you're gonna be like, no, Barret, no, don't.
Exactly.
It's going to get you. Sorry.
No, it's going to be beautiful. But no, it's true. You're right. They're expanding even more on the idea of like give player choices. Okay, we get a date at Gold Saucer. Let's do a million dates throughout the game. And that's really what they've done. They've confirmed that. Like we're doing, all these character side missions where it's most likely going to be like, hey, I got to walk up this hill and like do something on the world map. You want to go with Tifa? You want to go with Red? You want to go with Barret? You want to go with Aerith? Like you'll probably get to choose, and then you won't get to do the other ones for that playthrough. You have to go back and experience again. But I think it's so smart. And, we'll obviously get our canon scenes of stuff that happens that's not like, a fun date scene. But, to give a lot of player choice for that is very exceedingly clever, I think. But yeah, what I'm saying is we're in this realm now where Crisis Core wasn't, where we have a full performed game to explore Zack, to explore everybody. And I can't wait, because a lot of people still will be like, can't believe they changed Zack's character from the original FF7. And I'm like, did you play the game? Did you? Because he's not in the game. There is no Zack character. There's no character of Zack. He doesn't exist. Like, you could argue that like the stuff that Cloud does in the Nibelheim flashback, like is Zack's characterization, I guess. But you see the thing in Shinra Basement, it's like 2 seconds. It's literally like a 2-minute cutscene and nothing. Like, he's not a character. He's a non-character. He's like an Easter egg where you're like, oh yeah, that's the guy that like he thought that's it. So now we finally get to have Zack as a character. It's amazing.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think focusing on those characters could be a huge strength
Mm-hmm.
for just the characterization of them, but also just to play into Cloud's mentality, because obviously, like, if Aerith and like Zack are like reunited, and it's like, okay, maybe we have them in a moment, like, and you have Cloud, you're talking about these two people in Cloud's mind that literally shape like who he is later in the series. Like, these are huge players. Like, even in death, these people are very prevalent. Their deaths are very prevalent to Cloud and how he experiences his way of dealing with grief. So in that just instance alone, it could be very powerful to see like how they layer that together. Again, having that nuance is going to be interesting to see how they handle, because it's obviously fantasy and you can say a lot and show a lot, but it's how these characters sort of sit together and actually think, and like the human aspect of the fantasy, how this affects Cloud and what this will eventually do to him will be the thing that I'm the most interested in. And I hate to say it, but like that's actually the most interesting thing overall that I want to see done with like Zack's character, is how does this eventually come back to the character that we know and love the most, like the protagonist of Final Fantasy VII. Like, he is probably the most, and like protagonists like nowadays maybe get a little bit of a bad rep. Like, a lot of side characters can be really loud and very like energetic and very popular, but like Cloud is one of the best protagonists, period, in like media.
I mean, I was just talking about, he's hailed like that for a reason, like, because he's so nuanced. He's also not the strongest guy. He's like a Frodo, you know, where he's relatable. He's not the legendary warrior. He's the guy who's trying to make it, you know.
He's defined by weakness, and in the way that story plays into so many levels of, like, even in the article that we have failed to talk about, but there's a part of we talked about the cover, that's enough. But the thing about this Game Informer is that there's actually a section of the Game Informer where they talked about, I read this right before stream, where they talk about like what Final Fantasy VII deals with thematically, and they mention like mental illness, they mention like corporate greed, they mention all of these things, but that's a big fucking bite for a Final Fantasy, a game, period, to be talking about back then. And that is a big bite to chew now, because that is incredibly relevant to like a lot of like the way that we now are super conscientious about it, like a lot more. I wouldn't say like the most conscientious, but that's a conversation that like needs to be had in games, definitely, but in a more mature way than it was handled even in 7.
And listen,
Cloud is the vehicle for that, and he could potentially be that, but I don't want them to get this is like, I think above any theory crafting, this actually would be my highest want for this game, is for them to do that justice through Cloud in a way that hasn't been done.
I agree, and
if they can have that win, then that would probably make me think, even if the game wasn't that great, which it probably will be, just saying, that would make it worth it to me.
No, listen, and I think you just made me realize something. Beyond the Tifa live stream sequence, which is like a deep exploit, probably the best in the game of like mental health and kind of like self-actualizing, accepting yourself and everything, it becomes kind of a plot explosion the rest of the game. Much of FF7 after Midgar is just a plot explosion, stuff happening, tons of lore, tons of actions driving the plot, tons of stuff like, oh, this happens in Black Materia, and then actually the mechanics of it, or Sephiroth absorbs this and that. It's just like, this is why the game is so hard to explain. Have you ever tried to explain the original game to someone? It's impossible, by the way. Everybody's like, what are you talking about? Well, it's about a guy who does this and this is it. It's impossible. So the reason that is it's like a series of like 5 to 10 fantasy novels worth of stuff happening. And because of the limitations back in the day, there wasn't time or performance or any ways that were convenient to explore a character as much. So all we got is kind of like you know, once in a while we get an aside where they talk about how they're feeling, like after Aerith's death. Cloud talks for a second, be like, oh, we got to press on and everything. Anyways, I'm gonna get Sephiroth. That's what he says. Like, where's the grief? You know, so, and then he goes snowboarding. Right. So it's like,
right.
You know, there's not a lot. There's just plot. Now we have the chance and the time with the expanded games being 3 games to really explore all these things. And like Sleepy, you were just saying, the sort of mental health opportunities to unpack that and to see him physically performed. Because Cody's fantastic. He's great. And he really gets Cloud. He really gets Cloud.
And he's kind of talking, he's talked a little bit about like, it's like where Cloud is not himself. He's talked about like some of the work that he's had to do like for his voice. And I'm thinking to myself, it's like, there is a lot of that coming up. And I think that ultimately, if I'm going to make one, and I've said this before in other ways, and I do truly think that this is, we said that Zack will be at a low moment.
Yeah.
I think at the very end of this rebirth, and I've said this a couple times, but Cloud will be completely alone. We're gonna realize. I think that after talking about Aerith, about talking about Sephiroth, and all this other stuff, is that actually would probably be the most interesting thing that could come of Cloud's situation after all of these changes. Is where you really feel like, because Aerith has had to deal with the weight of the world on her own.
Literally.
Zack has put that same thing on himself. I want to see the moment where we realize it's like, okay, now let's play the rest of the game. Let's anticipate that 3 is going to be us experiencing what that's like through Cloud. And leaving off on 2 thinking he's completely separated now. Like there's now just a chasm of difference between him and the people that like are there to support him. And I keep coming back to this thought because what has happened and what I've been so sold on since the beginning is that synergy is a big aspect of Rebirth. It's a new mechanic. You can use your teammates to like do these super powerful attacks, and it's great. That to me is them selling to you that the collective like idea of experiencing and dealing with things together. This is how things go. Like we're a team. Everything's going to be great. And then the thing that keeps popping into my mind is they said that this is going to be the lowest point in the story.
Yeah.
So this is all setting up
by the end
to turn on its heel and just pull a 180 and have us just feel completely wrecked. And like isolated, and all of this is playing into the game mechanics. It's playing into the way that they're going to be telling the story. It's going to be the way that we leave the game is we're going to be like, we're alone now. Cloud is alone, and now how does he deal and cope with that mentality? How does he become now we're in new Advent Children territory. In a way, like something other than Advent Children. It's like, how do I now get to that point?
I just had a great thought as you said that. It's like, man, and you know, for example, there's a lot of characters like Barret who, you know, after probably 2/3 of the game, like they don't have as much screen time in the original. So like don't even talk about Yuffie Vincent. They don't even say anything. Like I said, they're not even barely characters. They're gonna be awesome in this. But you made me think of something. It's like, man, Zack. So there comes a point after the live stream scene where Cloud realizes the truth of what happened, right? He realizes what happened with Zack. So maybe we could get that kind of like Advent Children, you know, when he goes to the cliff of where Zack died and kind of gives this like kind of dedication to him, I'll be your legacy type thing. And it's like, man, that could actually happen in the game, right? And then maybe
you're so keyed into something so good because that what you're hitting on is like better context for what Advent Children should have been doing with Cloud,
right?
I think, because a lot of people's complaint about Advent Children is that it's a rehashing of where Cloud's arc already started, but it almost feels like what we should be starting, what foot we're leaving off on with the second game and into the third game is Cloud finding that I'm now on the path to finding inner strength, which is actually where Advent Children ends. Is Advent Children ends with Cloud experiencing for a moment what it feels like to start coping with the idea of like letting people in so that you don't have to feel alone.
Totally.
But we don't see him live that life. We don't see him
We never do.
coming and going through like the actual reconciliation of a lot of that stuff. It just kind of ends.
Yeah, we
with,
get hints of
we are
it, but that's
hopeful.
really it. Like, you know, we
We're
see
hopeful about it.
Yeah, we see like, you know, at the end he's definitely like more open to really embracing his kind of new family and being guilt-free. And, you know, he
Right.
like Tifa smiles at him, he smiles back. A year later he's hanging out with Tifa still. It's okay, so he hasn't like abandoned like his life.
He's not a
Okay.
complete shut-in. He's still wearing the fucking goth clothing, but at least
Yeah.
you know,
That's funny.
he seems like he's doing better.
Yeah, but it seems okay. How he really embraced like Marlene and Tifa, and like is not so like questioning of himself and stuff. But yeah, I agree. I mean that stuff could easily happen very organically, like after the live stream scene, after he kind of realizes what happened with Zack, remembers fully, regains himself. Like, okay, let's go through this. And then the question is, of course, what's gonna happen with Zack? Is Zack gonna be there still at that point? Is Zack gonna be gone after Rebirth? Are we gonna have the opportunity for those Zack scenes, or is he gonna die? Like, there's so many questions.
Know. I feel like there is going to be some sort of separation of the characters at some point, but maybe they will come together. I really hope that we just don't have this like constant like coming back and forth between the characters, because that it would imply like a lot of world mechanics that might feel very intrusive to the player. I'm sure that they can handle that well, but that's sort of my fear. But I just love that idea. I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to what you just were saying.
Please, let's unpack it.
Like the Advent Children scene where Sephiroth, where Cloud is standing, you know, in the shadow of the Buster Sword, and that's sort of what
beautiful scene.
Cloud feels like is that he is a mimic, he is a fraud, in some ways, and that the strength that he had was actually Zack's. This is definitely the characterization of him in Advent Children, but I feel like that scene would have been so much more profound if you're looking at it more from the perspective, and if the framing of the story is correct, which kind of like what we're implying Rebirth's direction to go into, is that Cloud is looking desperately for something to lean on.
Yeah.
And like be able to, like, maybe he is searching for help. Maybe he is being vocal about it, but like at the same time cannot. Like he's not getting what he needs. That would actually make Cloud feel, I think, elevated. We would have entered into, we are now in an elevated territory where it's more like, because the way that it kind of happens in the original is that Cloud falls into the live stream and Tifa goes to him. She finds him in the live stream and reconnects himself. But I would really like to see Cloud start to find that in a way for himself. I think that the Tifa scene still is very relevant and still needs to happen, but I want to see, before maybe that happens, like the struggle of him to try and grapple to something as he's kind of falling down a little bit. Like where
I agree, and there's a line in the trailer that you just made me think of where he's like, sometimes I don't even feel like myself, sometimes I don't know who I am, I know things I shouldn't.
And there's fear there too, dude. There's
Cody
like a
put this like
he doesn't like know himself, and he knows that he doesn't know himself, and he's like, I'm not to be fucking like trusted.
Yeah, and I really think if they're smart, they're gonna have it, which has kind of been hinted at already, that's him talking to Tifa, the person who actually knows him. None of these people know him. He's known him for like a few hours. So like Barret doesn't even know. Literally a few hours ago, he's like, this guy's an idiot. Yeah, exactly. Like Tifa. Well, the most important thing is that Tifa knows who Cloud actually is, like as a kid. So for him to say that to her would be very vulnerable, kind of like, can you help me figure this out? And then maybe she will be like, yes, and very supportive. But then that is when Sephiroth sows the seeds of discord between him and Tifa and says, is that Tifa? Are you sure? Could you trust her? And then he starts freaking out and questioning everything. Yeah,
that's what we were kind of talking about before, where it's like the synergy system and how like the game is sort of building it up. Is we know in this section of the game where distrust is starting to build, but in the original, they're just like, Cloud's just, you know, that's just Cloud. Yes. He talks to himself sometimes.
He's crazy. Yeah. But no, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah,
it's to yourself, like, no one in their right mind as a party, like, listen, like Barret is not going to at a certain point. He even starts to do this in the Airbuster battle, like where Cloud just disassociates for a second. He's just having flash, like a mental headache, and Barrett's like, "Come on, man! Like, get your head in the game. Like, we're counting on you." And like you can hear in his voice that Barrett's slightly like there's disappointment. There's this
he's like, what is going on with this guy?
Relying on this guy, I'm kind of getting to know him, and I'm relying on him, and he's kind of faltering here. That is going to happen probably
more and more.
Rebirth in a moment where the party is like, dude, you just dropped the ball so hard, and like whatever just happened is horrible, and you could like, where were you? Like,
it's got to be when
why didn't you do something?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be. Well, there's definitely one moment where he does something really bad, and
yes, that moment for sure is gonna be like
replaying that was
how they're gonna be able to follow him.
That moment, that's what and that's your moment where I think it would be actually kind of cool if they don't follow him anymore and they leave him. But I played that recently when I replayed the original game, and I was like, it's uncomfortable. It's so disturbing. That scene in the aftermath is when Barret is like, yeah, Aerith left. And Cloud's like, what do you mean she left? It's like, what do you mean? What do you mean she left? Like, why wouldn't she leave? It's really uncomfortable. And they're kind of like disgusted with him. So I'm very curious how they play this. Because, we talked about it in the past, like how disturbing that scene could be in live action. But I love that Cloud is, I love that Cloud is questioning everything and is like, that's the peak of his like falling apart. So I think it could be really a good moment for what you're saying when they're like, Cloud, what are you doing, man? Like, we've totally lost faith in him, which I think needs to happen.
And then maybe at the same time, because what will probably happen is you probably will lose the ability to do synergy attacks.
Oh, so smart from storytelling perspective. Yes.
Actually thinking about this, and this was, and I'm not trying to like, this is not shots fired at devs, but one of the things about synergy system during my playthrough of it is that it feels like synergy is something that you could completely do without in gameplay. And I'm not saying that to say that they're useless. They're a huge spectacle, do a ton of damage, but it is also, and this is what they say too, is that you unlock synergy by strengthening your party members, by like strengthening the connection that you have with people. So maybe dialogue choices lead to more synergy options.
Oh my God. Stuff. Imagine.
So what I'm saying is that what if at some point they just take it away? And I'm saying this to say that you're not going to be mad that they take them away. It's going to be, that fun thing that I could do every once in a while is like gone. But you're just going to be like, oh my God, that's so fucking clever.
Hear me out. You just gave me an amazing idea. Picture it's like, so yes, after Cloud attacks Aerith, hurts her, she leaves, whatever it is, like some big moment where they lose faith in him completely. Imagine a reverse You're Not Alone scene from Final Fantasy IX. One by one, the party's literally leaving during a battle or something, and he's like, you see the menu. Like, he's like, Barret, please, and you see the synergy come in.
Barret, you're like, please, for the love.
This is Hideo Kojima level right here. Honestly, this is some Hideo system. I don't know if they do that, but imagine, like, you see the command for synergy and Barret like fade away, and then it's like, no, Barret lost trust in me, and Barret's like, Cloud, what are you doing, man? And just leaves, and then like, it'd be so painful and emotional. Ooh.
I'm gonna jump on this bandwagon too, and this is again to go along with just this idea and something that and I've said this before, but the idea of the character banter was so good, like, and I think that's like one of the things that people are so attached to from the remake is that it's gonna suck when you're at a low point or getting into a low point and that dialogue doesn't turn into just witty banter. But like you can see that relationship start to deteriorate just in battle. Like it could just be like maybe something just fucking happened, right?
It'd be
like
so sad
moment, and then you're just in a regular like field battle, and then like Cloud says something, and then Barret's just like,
yeah,
and
imagine.
you're like, my
imagine
fucking
he's just
God,
like
he
the
fucking hates
disappointment,
me.
or like imagine hearing the partners that I trusted you or something. It's like, oh,
Yeah, it's
painful.
like
Yeah,
like way to go, like this time. And you're
yeah,
just like, what do you, oh my God, I would actually start to like, I think if they play their cards right and they kind of keep us in that mindset, when they do decide to pull like punches like that, it's just
Oof.
gonna start feeling like so much more. The weight of each moment after that will matter more because it's
yeah.
like, okay, now you've built my relationship through gameplay. You've built these moments up through the banter of these characters, and now I'm invested, right? And now you're taking all of that away slowly, and then have Sephiroth show up, and then
Yes.
you have a really good Final Fantasy
Wait,
VII remake.
you just hit it though. You just said it. Cloud, everybody's like, I trust you, leaves him alone. And then what does he
And then
do? He goes to
turns to
Sephiroth
Sephiroth.
because he has nobody else. And Sephiroth says, like, see,
I'm here.
I'll always be here for you,
Yeah.
Cloud. And it's like,
This is
oh my God.
actually
It could be like game. I mean, it's already going to win Game of the Year, I think. But honestly, I think it already, I do call it, I'm going to call it that it's going to be the best Final Fantasy ever, this game. You heard it here.
I definitely think combat wise, you're gonna get probably the best game by default.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that you're gonna just.
I think
you're
you've
gonna
already,
get
yeah.
there.
I think we've already can already confirm it from just the trailers. Like looking at it, I was like, what in the other one was already genius. This is just like, this is like a whole other level.
This is, by the way, I want
Yeah.
to see this. If this isn't in the game, now I'm gonna be disappointed.
Yeah. So Nomura,
This is
I
one
know
of those
you're
things
here.
that they should be doing.
Listen, yeah, Nomura, I know you're here and on a burner. We've confirmed. We confirmed
Right.
other devs have watched. Yoshi P watches. If Nomura's watching,
Word.
yeah, just
Yoshi, pass this on, dude.
yeah, pass this on Yoshi P to Nomura. Get this in the game. Get this in the game.
Seriously, the one thing I actually kind of jump off on because I think somebody was mentioning it. Oh God, did I just lose the thought? Somebody just said something about it.
Wait, what was it in the chat? Yeah.
I
By the
think
way, I just
so.
want to say I'm focusing on my guests, but I'm reading chat. Lots of great thoughts in the chat the whole time. Just want to thank everybody for being here.
Somebody was talking about the DMW. And
Yeah,
that
yeah,
is
the DMW. Yeah, the
so
fading.
that is actually a perfect thought. So Excess says almost giving the DMW fading feel from the end of Crisis Core.
Totally.
This is actually what I'm getting super. And obviously, I've talked about Crisis Core. I focus on Crisis Core a lot. So like,
Yeah.
I think that a lot of what Crisis Core did not do well is being completely elaborated on in Rebirth. So what we're talking about is exactly what you're implying, just 100 times better than Crisis Core ever did it.
Totally.
And then it's the same thing with Loveless. Is that okay? It seems like Loveless is relevant to the story. Do I feel things about like the characters singing in this game? Yes. Like I'm not bleeding from the ears when Genesis is reciting Loveless or like pissing anybody off by bringing it up. No, I'm not doing that anymore. Like it feels like they have
Yes.
taken every note from that story and are now just being like, well, we could do this again and we just make it a lot better.
Totally. And that's what I've been trying to say. Like when I talk about the Advent Children moment kind of like materializing in here, I really do think that this is what the remake trilogy is. It's taking the entire legacy of FF7 and like combining it with this really nice revision into one cohesive, awesome thing that is just, it's perfect. You don't need to play anything else. I am 100% against everybody who says that. Pretty much everybody says that. When I got attacked when I tweeted that. Like you only have to play.
What?
You only have to play remake.
You only have to play the one?
What's that? You said?
You only have to play the one game?
No, I said you only have to play the remake trilogy. Nothing else. Nothing else.
I agree.
You can also start with Rebirth, but you should play the remake trilogy, I think. And yeah, people were a little upset.
They were not happy about that.
It's completely housed within itself by the ending. Everything will make sense, and I'm 100% confident in that because remake already makes sense. Aaliyah's in chat. My girlfriend, she played remake, loved it. There's a lot of stuff that kind of people like us who love the lore masters want to jump in and be like, actually, just in the OG, this happens, but you don't need that information to enjoy it fully, just like Aaliyah did. So like that's
I can say confidently that while I did experience the original story, I knew nothing about the compilation going into remake whatsoever. I had
Yeah.
a speaking of the PSP and Crisis Core, I had a PSP with Crisis Core, which I had not played.
Uh-huh.
I took that out of my video. I was going to explain that I actually had a copy of Crisis Core. I booted it up once and I never played it. I think I played it a little bit later, but when I had the PSP, no.
Yeah.
And then I had the Advent Children because they had them on the UMDs, like DVDs. I had
That's
the
awesome.
Advent Children UMD.
So cool, man.
And
Yeah.
that was the only way that I watched it, but I didn't like know what I was fucking looking at.
Yeah.
Half of the time. I was a kid. I wasn't a cinemaphile. I didn't like know anything about like I was just like cool, Sephiroth's dope.
Yeah, exactly.
Flying around.
I have a lot of friends that did that too, because they just like whatever. I had Advent Children on and something. They're like, this looks awesome. And you don't need to ever experience all the stuff, but I think particularly it's going to be, you know, like a strong and fully cohesive story in the remake trilogy, and it's all going to make sense. Like, yeah, Professor Noctis is saying to you, he has kids playing it. Like, and people forget when you played the original, there's a lot of mystery. You don't know who Sephiroth is fully. You don't know all the stuff, and then eventually with Zack, you're like, why? What's going on with Cloud? There's new mysteries in the remake trilogy, right? It's all going to be answered by the end, and all the other stuff is just going to be for the deep fans who want to go and play Crisis Core and OG and watch the other stuff, and you know, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. The curiosity is all that I was gonna say. Is that it's just at the end of remake, I became sleep easy because I'm like a superhero. The way I phrase that is so stupid. I became I started creating videos because I was just shocked. I was like, what on earth is going on here at the end with these whispers? No one has an answer. Just let me like sit down and like start watching all this media, and I loved it. I loved all of it. I had such a good time figuring all that stuff out and just like kind of revealing certain things to myself. Obviously, I went too far. I was maybe being a little unreasonable and got a little obsessive. But you know, you could just stop after like being like, oh, Advent Children, Kadaj, Lazizu. You know, just you'll pick up little things, and there's little elaborations that you just see just by, you know, sitting and playing Rebirth. Now you're in with the train, something will happen, you'll be like, oh, that's a callback. So
yeah, no, it's fantastic. And the legacy, man, the legacy, I'm telling you, it's gonna be fully
will it all be answered?
Will it all be answered? Well, yes and no. So like I said before too, when there's stuff like this sort of like Sephiroth hints, like connections to Advent Children and stuff, I deeply think still that won't all like, if it's answered, it'll be like stuff that we're talking about right now where we pick it up and we know, but it's not absolutely going to be explained. Like, so anyway, this is what happened. There's going to be like a 10-minute scene. Here, this guy went here, that guy did this, he switched with it. It's probably not going to be like that. And I don't think it should be like that. It'd be kind of very anti-climactic and kind of like over-explained and stuff. So I think if anything, it'll be hinted at. And the stuff that'll be explained is all the stuff we talked about earlier, like character and all the really important stuff, you know, that makes up, in our opinions, like the heart of the story. So that's kind of what I mean. Like, it's going to really tell the heart of FF7, all the stuff that matters. And there might be some really cool kind of like Easter eggs that get dropped and hints of lore for the lore masters like you, but it won't necessarily all be 100%, you know, like written out.
That they're going to need... I agree completely. I think there will probably be some Ultimania drop, like maybe a year after the game is finished, like completed, where they will like have an entire breakdown of like, well, this was this man from the future, and he came in and he created this whole mess or some horrible, and you're just gonna sit there and be like, oh god. But
yeah, exactly. It's not like
the thing that matters, and I do think that there will be parts of the story that need to be defined clearly to a point where it doesn't feel alienating to the audience, to even the newer audience that is just like trying to be like, okay, well, what is this? But that has to be framed a certain way. But I think once you have just that enough of that to just feel like it's not all being held together by gum, once you get those characters attached, or the players attached to the characters, that's where the strength of the narrative is going to just
Yeah,
continue to push. It's like,
totally.
do I
And
feel something for Cloud? Do I feel something for
yeah,
Aerith? Yes.
and like
The
I said
answer is
before
yes.
too, like
Win.
the original FF7, a lot of it is a plot explosion. It's literally like this. All Stormlight Archive books are all Lord of the Rings, like even more than that in like a bunch of game. But it's so much plot. There's so little character because of the time. There's no voice acting. There's no performance. So like, I would much rather we focus on character. Do you see my point? Than like, I don't need to know every little like micro mechanic of the magic system for Sephiroth and how he gets around. What's the Masamune and everything. We know that he's an oracle. We know Aerith is an oracle. Right, that's all we need to understand all their planetary knowledge. We know why Aerith is. She's an ancient. We know why Sephiroth is. He's stolen, by force, the knowledge of the life stream. But you see my point? I'd much rather focus on like, how's Cloud feeling? What's his performance going to be before the North Crater? Yeah.
I'm so with you on that, because it does feel like a lot of the time too in 7, characters are like, why is this monster attacking the village? And they're like, I don't know, maybe X, Y, and Z. And then you're just like,
yes,
okay, that potentially is what is happening.
But you see my point? It's like, oh, well, there's a boss battle now.
The logic of it, you're just there. They're experiencing this stuff happening. So it doesn't need. Yes, exactly. To your point is that we don't need to know. We just have to feel like it's something that is being addressed and not being like just washed over. Like they can't be oblivious. They can be reactionary to a certain degree, and not feel like it's a complete derailing of the concept of what Final Fantasy VII is.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I mean when it's going to be, I think, a stronger story than the original for that reason. Like, we all love the plot so much because it's so meaningful, and particularly a couple of character moments, hence Aerith and everything else that happens. But in this case, I think it's going to be a lot more meaningful, as Remake already is more meaningful than the stuff in Midgar in the original, because you have all these amazing character moments like John Bentley, bellowing his heart out, and after the plate fall, and all these things happening that are like amazing, resonating experiences, pretty much, which is carried 100% by Nobuo's music. I'm just going to say it in the original. I'm just going to say it, right? Like, the character art is charming, and the kind of like Lego aesthetic stuff is amazing, but like, we all know it's Nobuo's music that like carried all those moments. And like Aerith's theme, hello, right? It's just like such an amazing piece of music, and he's such a genius that he was able to do that. And but in this, we have that coupled with cinematic language and lensing and lighting and all these things that me and Sleep Easy love. And also we have performance, we have voice acting, we have performance capture, we have all these amazing things to tell the story now. So yeah, I've been saying this since Remake finished. We are not thinking big enough. Nobody's thinking big enough. This conversation
I think
here,
you're completely right, dude.
yeah, this conversation here. So when we hit that synergy abilities going away and they fade away like that, now we're thinking big enough. This is some big brain stuff. But yeah, that's the sort of kind of dramatic visual storytelling in the medium of gaming that I want to see in this, personally,
especially in a game. And I think that this is the other aspect of it, because I know that like so many people are so focused on Final Fantasy VII story. Like, this is one of the greatest stories told in gaming ever. Period, and while people are fixated on that,
it's right up there with
also is
Ocarina of Time, Metal Gear Solid. Like just there's a short list of like the best stories. This is that.
There's only few that can argue that this is like by far like the best, or objectively perhaps one of the greatest games of all time. People consider it that way, but at the same part, in the same aspect, and it's a big title to hold up, it's not just about the story. And because it's a game, you also if you're going for remake, you're going for gold, you're trying to outshoot the original. Like, this game has to be one of the best feeling games of all time. So integrating that gameplay with storytelling is 100% an avenue where that is gonna. And you have Cloud mental state. You were talking about Sephiroth perhaps being like, hey, Cloud, come with me. What if that's like the perfect time where he's like, let me take you to Nibelheim, and then you're playing Nibelheim with Sephiroth being like, I'm your buddy now, because we see that scene where they're coming up on Nibelheim.
I'm telling you, after Edge of Creation, when he says like, join me, imagine now that it's like, I'm still here for you. Everyone else has left you. but I'm still here. And he like, okay, embraces him. Imagine if like the reunion is like a choice. Oh man, it's gonna be crazy.
It's gonna be, you know
It's
what?
gonna hurt.
That
It's
would
gonna
be the third
Yeah.
game leaving
Yes.
us off on, or giving us like that hint of like, oh, okay, so that thing that Sephiroth said at the end,
Yes.
we really do have a choice. And
Yeah.
now we're like, oh god, dude, I'm so ready for that game. I'm so ready for
Yeah.
this game to come out. I can't even imagine where we're gonna be sitting in like
Yes.
4 years where this third the trilogy is gonna be leaving off. It's gonna be nuts.
It's gonna
I'm
be
here for the whole thing.
Yeah. No, I'm telling you, I call it. This is the best Final Fantasy game that's gonna release. Rebirth. Rebirth will be the best Final Fantasy game. I think it might finally top FF10 for me. Final Fantasy 10. But chat, what do you think? But yeah, it's gonna be incredible. Also, yeah, chat. Hi everybody who's come in and everybody who's commenting. We're reading all your comments. Like we're talking about performance capture. We talked about the DMV thing, the DMV. So, yes,
That's what I keep thinking all the time. I was fucking that up when I was doing
Yeah, I
my
always say
Crisis
it too,
Core video.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, this is.
and that
this
was
is
an
not
amazing
helping.
comment. That was an amazing comment. Thank you again. Yeah, we're reading chat. We're just really into the conversation. So hello everybody.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's been a long time coming. I think we're gonna get something because they're not limited by Midgar anymore either. I think they're really gonna explode. And Professor Noctis just said too, Sid. Like we have all these characters like Sid and Vincent who are so. I mean, Vincent, like I said, he's barely a character in the first one because he's a secret character. He really couldn't be. How's he gonna act at the reunion and stuff? So there's a lot of stuff that we couldn't even imagine in the first one. You know.
That's sort of like, and this, you actually brought it up too, where you were talking about like interactions, perhaps maybe with like Vincent and Yuffie.
Yeah.
Where they actually do have some stuff to talk about. Like Vincent's stuff is that he used to be a Turk, so you
Yeah.
have a perspective on the world that,
Mhm.
while dated, because he's an old man, is an
Yeah.
interesting sort of perspective to have. It's like, okay, well, Vincent has maybe a perspective of Wutai that like Yuffie has never seen before. Maybe he knows like, oh yeah,
Ooh,
like
yeah.
Wutai used to be thriving, and like by the time that I like went to sleep, like maybe like the war was like, maybe conflict had just started to like some
Yeah,
conflict
I never thought
had
about
just
that.
started.
Yeah.
And you're just thinking to yourself like, this is like gold. Like they're
it's a gold
sitting
mine,
on
yeah.
so many like interesting tidbits of conversation that these characters could be having that is humanizing them and building a relationship with like these characters that you just never think would maybe even get along. In the same way that like Barret and Red 13 in remake was like, oh, this is a match made in heaven. You're like,
Oh yeah.
the
totally.
banter between these two is perfect.
It's
like,
so good. Yeah. That's why I always said like I have full faith. Like there's too many character scenes in the first one. When a lot of people got up in arms and said, "Oh, what about the ending? What about the mystery?" And so I was like, "Who cares?" It's quite honestly, who cares? I don't care. The character scenes are so good. You know, whatever scenario they're going to be in is going to be so well done, and that connection of Barret and Red, genius, right? To have them kind of play off each other, and it's all just too good. So I don't have any like worries about anything that's going to happen. And I mean, even the last trailer, like, so good.
That last trailer,
So much
definitely
charm
was...
and like, yeah, it's fantastic.
There is something that I would actually. So I don't know if you've seen this, but it's something that I just recommend all. I think because there's been so much rebirth news that has been coming out that some people might have like maybe glossed over it. But the Red 13 retelling of the remake.
Yeah, that was great. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I actually found it as a filmmaker because I think a lot of people. I'm not a filmmaker, but having learned about film, I found it very interesting because I watched a lot of TV growing up, and it sort of felt like that. Going from season 1 to season 2, like let's recap season 1. Like, so we're gonna spend like 5 minutes, kind of just like isolating the most important moments.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it felt like to me, where we are missing some of maybe the details that people find important. Like, okay, well, like Red 13 and the writer just doesn't explain whispers until like the very end of this recap.
Yeah.
But what they do focus on is a lot of the talk of reunion. They focus a lot on the flower. They focus a lot on like a lot of the Aerith stuff, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, so the only reason we're getting this sort of recap is because all of these things are going to be what is relevant only to your experience of knowing what happens in Rebirth.
Yeah, exactly. It
So
was prepping
right.
for Rebirth. What's up, Electric Glad?
So thinking about again what the flower represents and like how that is relevant to like the theme of life. It's also something that Aerith talks a lot about. She talks to the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
All of that stuff hasn't been 100% like resolved or even mentioned
Explored.
yet. We see it
Yeah.
in her song where the flowers start blooming around her.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. I wonder where, and then that whole thing is gonna go. And it made me think about the I don't know where this thought is coming from, by the way. It just happened.
Let it go. Let it out.
The Aerith mural has that flower in the center with the two sort of spiraling life streams that are sort of coming out of the center.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like the ball of the flower and I'm thinking to myself, and there's the cetras that are praying and stuff like that. I wonder if that will ultimately be the moment. I wonder if
Huh.
at that moment we're going to get, because it's the praying position. I urge everybody to go look at the Aerith mural and look at this, because there's the red cetra doing like the I'm about to get stabbed pose.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is all gonna actually come down to the worlds merging in
Ooh.
that moment.
Yes.
And I'm like,
that would be awesome.
Why? But why? And
Yeah,
I
but
can't,
why?
I can't. It
Well, you have
feels
listen. I got an idea. Like I said, Zack, right? So Zack is an instrument of Sephiroth now. I think is a possibility. I think that's a cool idea. What if worlds merged because Sephiroth wanted them to at that moment, so he could use Zack somehow to do something? You know?
Is it okay? So this is also just something that happens with theories in general for me, which is
Mm-hmm.
that look, I try not to inject too much of my own perspective
Mm-hmm.
into the thought, but I'm just looking at like the pieces, right? So like I say I don't know, but it feels like these pieces, the cetra praying in the mural and the mural itself matters. The flowers matter. But I don't know where that goes or how we get to that point. But what that does indicate, like you're saying, even with like Zack, it's like, okay, well, this is a missing piece. This would be a proper time for him to sort of interject in this moment.
Yep.
So I wonder if maybe is Zack controlling his where he goes?
All right.
Like, is he
That's a good
in
question.
maybe a flux of there? I also urge you guys to check out the subtext video, because it's sort of a branch off idea of the video he literally just posted, which I just did watch. He describes
I gotta watch it
that
after.
the events of Zack in the Last Stand to where we see him end up in the Rebirth trailers, where he's talking to Elmira, that doesn't line up necessarily timeline wise for him to have, like, it wouldn't have taken him this long to get to Midgar. So when he was whisked away by the wind,
Right.
he probably didn't end up right in a new timeline, but it was more of a when and where, relevant to the song of No Promises to Keep is when and where.
Yeah.
Which is super subtle and super good. Good job, Nojima, for that one. But the idea then is that this potentially like is this prone to happen again? Will Zack just be jumping around to different like little like events and things that are happening? Is this something that he's controlling? Is it something that he's not? Is he just permanently here? But at the same time, everyone's consensus is, in terms of like theories and like what people are expecting, is that Zack shows up. These things have to merge, because
Zack has to have some purpose. Yeah, totally.
Right.
He's got to have some big purpose too, because they're focusing on him quite a bit. Yeah.
To your point, in my mind, it feels all but fitting for him to show up right at that moment. I feel like everyone's like, this is the moment that Zack has to experience. And again, we've been talking about it, and it's like this would be super good for his growth of a character.
Yes.
But it's like, then how does he mechanically get to that moment?
Yeah,
Does he go looking for it? Does he show up? Or is it the worlds merging in this moment where Zack then just happens to show up because this is a part of Sephiroth's plan of the worlds merging?
Yeah, there's like a big hole in the sky too. So it's like, is that gonna
shows up?
Yeah, is like the hole in the sky going to continue to open or something? Like, who knows? Like, what's the mechanics of, and we will be seeing very soon. It's going to be great. But hey, listen, let's how are you doing on time?
I'm doing okay.
Do you have a cutoff time?
I can wrap it up if you're going. I would actually like to just say one thing because you just made it.
No, listen, I was literally just going to say if we want to take a quick break, we could do that, and then we could do some more. Yeah,
we could do that.
Hold that thought, or you can talk to chat. I just wanted to run to the restroom. If you want to,
go. I'll wait, but I'll entertain chat for a moment.
Yeah. I want to hear this thought. I'll be back in 1 second. Good. All right, be good, chat. Be nice to him.
Yeah, I'm gentle, and I'm also very fragile. So please, I think I know most of the faces in here. How are you guys enjoying the talk? I actually couldn't have expected this conversation to go any better. I typically get a little nervous having not talked to Phil in so long, but like just. It is a breath of fresh air every time we talk, because it is just talking about these things is a highlight, and doing it with people that I enjoy, like spending time with, is another highlight. Yeah, and honestly, like it's been awesome. It's just the bounce. It's the bounce. It's like, oh my goodness, like, and then that could happen, and then that could happen. It's very much feels like a little bit of a writer's room, which I like the vibe of. Oh, it's the first time watching. Well, that's awesome. I hope you are enjoying yourself. I was gonna tell him about the tear in the sky. I wonder if that's just gonna continue to rip open, or if that's just like a pocket. That would make more sense. That would kind of maybe explain. Maybe things are just becoming more and more unstable. Maybe that's sort of where your world's merging moment happens, is the tear opens up. I'll really explain this to Philip, but you guys will be in the know now. That's sort of what I'm thinking. That would be neat. What about Minerva? Dude, I wish. My thought, and I didn't want to say this while he was there, but he was like, because we were talking about like Zack potentially kind of being like the end result of he would be like the low point at the very end of the story. I want to have him be at that low point and meet Genesis, which is a secret one of mine. Do I expect that to actually happen? Absolutely not. Don't worry about it, chat. I won't. But I want it. I want Genesis to show up. What am I most excited to see? I honestly just got so stoked about the Cloud stuff. I really want to see them push that character so much farther. I'm really excited for just the character interactions and the dialogue. Pretty much everything we've been talking about is what I'm looking forward to. As far as things that are confirmed in the game, I think I have had just an insane reaction to just seeing places that they've built. So just walking around is my actual biggest. I'm the most hyped for. I'm really just excited to explore the world of Rebirth. I think there's just so much work that they're putting into it. I feel like it's gonna be so obvious to people that they spent such an amazing amount of time on the world once we all get our hands on it. It was my one experience with Under Junon. I was just telling them about.
I agree.
Leah asked the question of like, what are you most excited about? And I said everything we're talking about, as far as like maybe something hopeful to expect.
Yeah.
But like, I'm super big into just. I played the demo, and I like at a certain point had to just kind of like wrap it up at like 20 minutes. I just went to the like Under Junon area, and I just walked the fuck around, dude. I was like, let me just see what the characters are saying, and like look at the scenery and take a look. And I was so stoked. I was having the time of my life, and I at that point, and I'm gonna be honest, because I'm not a gamer in the way that like
Blitz.
You are, or that Blitz is, or where Schrodinger's baby seal is like trying to get speed runs on Vice. Like I've never even beaten Vice.
I did that one, but I'm generally not like that either. I just really love remaking.
Well, you did it. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, that
so
was
cool.
awesome.
I remember that. Yeah, it was so. That's congratulations on that. That's a
Thank you
right there. But I was really nervous playing it because I was thinking to myself that this is a really big opportunity. Like I'm playing a demo, and I should probably like make a video like everywhere, like every way that everyone else is making the video, because they're highlighting like the combat, they're highlighting the Sephiroth scene, the Nibelheim stuff, the banter. And then once I started walking around under Junon, I was like, oh wait, no, this is the kind of gamer I am.
Yes.
I like looking at
Oh yeah. Listen, you guys in the
art.
chat who've seen my playthrough, like we're usually chatting, talking about character, talking about writing, scenes, like chilling, take our time. I love a good challenge once in a while, but yeah, I mean, I love the same thing, man. Just taking my time through a game, enjoying the atmosphere, the feeling of being in that world. It's beautiful. Yeah,
that is the way to do it. I think just having like the option was sort of like, oh, this game is allowing me to kind of like, it's gonna let the combat people indulge in the combat. It's gonna let people who are super excited about like the story just eat up the story and the lore and whatever. And then it's like, if you also just want to like hang out in a village and just kind of like shoot the shit, maybe like look at like some of the stuff that we got
man,
under the books and whatever.
You guys know I love music. Like we're listening to the music in the game and even analyzing that. Like it's all just so much fun. But yeah, but thank you for being nice to Sleep Easy. At least I think they were. Chat.
They were very passive. They asked some questions.
Okay.
They threw some softballs at me,
okay.
and I was able to catch them, even though my reflexes are terrible. But
great. I wanted you to tell me that crazy idea you had. So.
Oh my god, I did tell chat that. I'm so sorry.
Oh, you did. Okay, let me hear.
But the tear in the sky for that we've seen, I think that's just going to continuously get bigger. I think that rip is going to continue to tear until the very end, and then you're going to have that world merging moment. And Super Sloth is quoting the article here, and I'm going to read it just because because it's relevant to sort of what we were talking about with Zack and his role and sort of like the developer's perspective on it. It says here that we have used Zack to depict the combined view of the original creator's intent of how the world of Final Fantasy came to be and its policies and rules in governing this world. That quote is definitely interesting. Yes. So this is a good suggestion quote of Zack will be used as the vehicle, as we kind of already understand him to be, to not only explore like moments of the OG and perspectives of the OG, but also be the driving force of like the not OG stuff, some of the newer stuff that will be probably introduced through him, which now that we're talking about it, it's just like, how does he get to the story, into the original story without, making everything all sorts of weird? But there's actually a couple of quotes here. Do you have anything to say about that? And maybe I'll read the another quote that I found interesting.
No, I love it. I love the idea of the sky getting bigger, and like you said, kind of I think it actually ties more into what you were saying earlier with Zack, like the exploration of Zack's character and how it's going to tie to him kind of feeling powerless is almost more interesting to me than him being the big hero all the time and stuff. So I think that could be really good. But yeah, go ahead. I'd love to hear the quote.
Okay, I'm jumping onto your thought first.
No, please, yeah.
That's actually amazing because it feels like okay, now I'm starting to like it. So if Zack is, there's something that I really like about the because it's a similar piece of media, and I'm going to mention it, is Neon Genesis Evangelion, the Rebuild series. It's a really great series of movies that does something very similar to sort of like what we're seeing a lot now in Japanese media with like Rebirth, with some of the other, I don't want to spoil the other ones because that kind of gives that away, but they're kind of different. But it's a sort of retelling, restructuring But one of the things I really liked about it is that you have this character in the movie where he is known as being passive, and then in the series, and then in the remake he is still passive, but in a moment of like the most pinnacle moment in what is influencing this character that sort of leads to the rest of the series, he interrupts that moment. He makes a decision to change it.
Ooh.
And then the entire series sort of goes in a completely different direction from there. And it's like the biggest, like, oh my gosh, this is now a completely different moment. Like, whatever happens after this is going to be different. But his role after that is that no one wants him to do anything. So the character that everyone wanted to have do something is now does this thing, and now is like, they're like, okay, now we are actually trying to make you powerless. We're going to strip all of that power away. And that is kind of a situation I would love to see Zack in, where somebody who's such an active player, trying to be the hero, trying to be this thing, be in a position now where he's just witnessing and actually unable to do anything about it. Any of these things.
I would love
where
that.
It's like they're actually removing his ability to take action to some degree. So what you're left with when you do that to a character is, how do they mentally cope with
Right.
the things that they're seeing? You're framing it, you're putting so much more emphasis on the character's mental state than their actions. And that would start shaping a better version, I think, of Zack. So maybe we're going to see a lot of Zack not able to change much, because he, like right now, he's in the middle of it being like he like looks at the sky. It's like, this is a completely different world for him.
Yeah, he
like,
doesn't know what's
whatever
going on.
happened to the world is like seems almost irreversibly changed.
Yeah, and he's also
now
like,
he's sort of an outsider.
yeah,
Like he's a fish out of water. Like, what is happening here? You know?
And he's a guy that's like, Zack is constantly kind of like at the forefront of what's going on. And like, yeah, he experiences tragedy with Angeal and stuff, but he's usually like pretty able to solve the problems that are presented to him in his story, you know? And it's going to be super interesting to have him in a position where like he can't just, you know what I mean? Just, oh, let's go fight that guy and everything's solved. It's going to be very cool. And I think there's just so much opportunity there for character as well. But yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. And like we said, remember what the dev said, Empire Strikes Back. I think a lot of people and all of the theories are just kind of like, oh yeah, anyway, Zack's going to show up and like fight people and stuff. It's like, you guys are too caught in the Crisis Core mindset, man. Like, no, man, it's going to be Empire Strikes Back. Zack is probably going to go through some stuff.
Yes, we definitely need to see like the rise and very steep fall of all of these characters' moments, like 100%. I'm gonna go ahead and just read this quote, and then maybe we'll see what we get into after that. But so it says here, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth may feature side content like mini games galore, but the main story will undoubtedly leave its mark. Since Rebirth brings the story up to a point where the party reaches the Forgotten Capital, which is what we're all aware of, right?
Oh, yeah.
Players will need to reckon with Aerith's story arc after playing a game built around deepening the connections between the party members. So this is something that they talked about, which is that they're in other articles where it is about the impact and how things move forward from this. So, and also with the key art, they were talking about how all of these characters, that's actually, I'm going to guarantee it now, that is what the key art is featuring, where they're all standing on the cliff.
On the
That's
precipice?
the ending. That is the ending of the game. Because
okay, I like that.
It says specifically in that, from Nomura, he's saying they're all together, but they're all looking to their own, like inwards, and they're contemplating each individually what they are like going to have to overcome for themselves. That is because that doesn't make any sense though, because of everything that they've said. Is that it's about the synergy, it's about the characters coming together, it's about all this stuff that shouldn't be happening in the key art. It should be the exact opposite. So what? And that's actually why we're facing the back of them in this key art, and then in the remake key art where they're all
see their
looking to
front.
the
Yep.
sunset. Exactly.
On the highway. Yeah,
This
Ooh.
is that filmmaker part of it
Yes.
coming in. This is what we're getting into. So
Oh, yeah.
the weird thing about that doesn't make 100% sense is that there's no sky that is like meteor filled, but
True.
maybe
But hey,
I'm wrong about that.
you never know, though.
Um,
Events might get shuffled around, as they said, in location order, which, of course, is another thing that a lot of people are saying we might do Northern Crater, then end in Forgotten Capital.
That's right.
Because
Good
they
point.
actually stop back at Forgotten Capital at some point, unless I'm insane. So that could be.
No, you're right.
Yeah. So that could be what he means is a little bait and switch. They didn't say when at Forgotten Capital.
That's right.
Mhm.
Thank you for reminding me about that. By the way, I would have just completely overlooked that.
Totally. And I said in my other video too, like the Tifa thing where, you're kind of building doubt in Tifa. The person that actually gets Cloud to hand over the black materia is Tifa. It's an illusion. So it's like, oh, they're really building up towards that. And it's going to be beautiful, Ooh, chilling.
Oh God, that's also just like
Chilling.
how's that even gonna work with them? Like that's also with the relationship that Sephiroth's building with like Tifa and Cloud. That's gonna be another betrayal mentally. It's like, oh, okay, so you're just like a fake.
Mm-hmm.
When this is the part where it gets a little
What you got?
somber here.
Ooh, what do we got?
When I asked the development team about the scene, the previously jovial mood dropped into a somber state.
What?
While the team is tight-lipped about how the events will play out, it insists it has achieved something that will shock even players who have played through the scene in question multiple times. So something's different.
It sounds like it, yeah.
Yeah.
Can we get some face drops in the chat? They literally face drop. They're like, they literally did the face drop. What about that one scene?
What about that one scene?
So yeah, I think what we were saying earlier. Yeah, there, Leah did it. So what we're saying earlier is, I think it's true, man. Something's gonna happen. I love the idea of the Aerith. Well, we know for a fact we're gonna hear her prayers. She says in the trailer, "Planet, lend me your strength." Okay. So it's gonna be expanded in some capacity. I hope they play into her character and it's more tragic. And like I said, that pan up shot. What's gonna happen?
That's the kicker right there. That pan up. We all were like, well, that's a dead deal.
Yeah. So Aaliyah has. I think she'd missed it when we talked about the lyrics. We did, Aaliyah, talk about your grimdark theory with the lyrics, and it was beautiful.
It's gonna be so. Yes.
Yeah, and Sleepy's had a good point with the lyrics too, that it's like when and where and stuff, and we did talk about that. The song is probably most certainly about Zack from Aerith's perspective, not Cloud. As we say, Cloud is a daydream for Aerith. It's the daydream that she can live a normal life and be a happy girl, and then she realizes like she has a higher calling, and that's what makes her such a cool character. Yeah, selfless, like awesome character.
God, that's gonna be. It's how they handled that is gonna be such a big deal. So. This is now the quote from the team themselves, so not just the journalist. Beginning with the original Final Fantasy VII, when we had started working on it, it was already decided from the get-go that life would be the central theme surrounding Final Fantasy VII. So this is something actually, as a side note, that has already been talked about. They've said this in Advent Children interviews about the theme of life. This is very prevalent. So Nomura says, I knew that we had to depict life and death within this title. So that's why you're getting that rebirth sense. Prior to Final Fantasy VII, there have been other titles where characters have experienced tragedy, but many of them have come back or have been revived in some way. Oh, God. But boy. I believe that loss is something that happens unexpectedly. Oh, taking a note from Sakaguchi here.
So that's what Nomura said.
So dramatic.
Which developer's talking?
All Nomura. This is all Nomura.
And this just came out today, right?
Yes, this literally came out today.
So he said, and he's talking about, like, say, in like whatever Final Fantasy 13 or something, like people have come back.
That's what he's just talking about in different titles. Like people are bringing back characters, and he's saying that. But I believe that loss is like unexpected.
Yep.
And he says, and it's not something so dramatic or drawn out, but it's something in which a person that you have just conversed with is suddenly gone and
Oof.
never to come back.
So sad. Yeah.
That's a big thing to say, Nomura.
Yeah, I really think it's gonna be like you know, he you know, like I said, there's a moment where they save her, and then yeah, it happens unexpectedly after that. That's my theory.
We're gonna
Sephi, how
be
you doing?
like, we're gonna be like in this moment maybe of like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing, and maybe like she's in our party and we're fighting like, you know, Sephiroth or something like that, and you're gonna be like, awesome, and then you're gonna be like, Aerith, and you're just gonna turn around and she's just isn't.
I'm telling you, it could literally be like, oh man, I'm telling you, like from a shot selection standpoint, it could literally be talking close up, and it's like, anyways, and you pan down, and yeah.
Oh god, yeah, that would be so. Oh god,
I'm telling you, I hope they play into the terror, pure fear of Sephiroth, and how strong he is. Because in the original, when I played as a kid, he was scary, but for different reasons. Just because I was a kid, you know, and the music was really scary and stuff. In this, I think they can really make him terrifying, as they are in Ever Crisis. Like, he's scary as a kid. So
you're making a really good point too, and highlighting one of the aspects of Aerith's death is that it is like it really makes you focus on Sephiroth as a villain.
yeah,
And for her to, if it has to be Sephiroth.
yeah, and I think you just said it. I think it really is. I think it really is like thinking back to what we actually felt in that scene. A lot of people remember the sadness. I cried. It's the first time I ever cried in a video game. A lot of people say that. I really think the more prominent feeling is Sephiroth. Like, he's like, how could he do? Like, you know, he's evil. He's a horrible person. He's a villain. And I think that's the moment where it really solidified him as like the greatest villain in gaming.
Yeah, it's like it's his moment in Nibelheim singularly, and then this is him defining himself again as like this. It's not just the past. He's like, he's present. He's here. He is marking Cloud again in a way that is like irreplaceable. Like, you can't get this person back. And so it's like, I took away your childhood, essentially your childhood dreams, and now I'm taking away the prospect of your future.
Yeah,
it's like, okay,
terrifying.
This motherfucker has to be stopped.
Yeah,
we gotta stop this guy.
It's terrifying.
It's personal.
And again, like that, it's gonna be awesome. And again, to have it with the performance side of Sephiroth, like, you really don't know what he's like, how he sounds in the original when that happens, and he gives his like sort of like pontification afterwards in his speech. You know, you're just a puppet, and it's like, what does he sound like during it? There's so many questions. So, you know, is he impassioned? Is he kind of like even keeled, how he is at the edge of creation? Like, what's his, you know, is he crazed like he is in Nibelheim? Like, we don't know. So it's going to be so interesting to have characterization attached to that, you know?
You're so right. You're so right. And just how that carries through. And also just like how, again, I really hope that the way that they approach that Sephiroth, that version of him in this particular game, I want to see him really start to maybe be more, not just manipulative, but more in tune with himself and like what is happening and what he's feeling and all this other stuff. Not belittling him like Cloud, but more just like savoring the fact that this is happening to him in a way. Because in OG, it's like you're pretending to be a person. That's what he's sort of trying to make him think. But in this, I want him to sort of be like, oh yeah, this is like the moment like where I like made you like essentially mine. Like, this is the moment that like binds us together in this way. Maybe even being a little bit like reminiscent in a weird way would be really kind of creepy.
Yeah, you're so right. Ooh, that'd be good too. Reminiscence, because he says in remake, oh, the memories.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly that feeling too. Is that it's sort of like he's walking through memory lane a little bit.
Yeah,
in a bad way.
It's gonna be terrifying. But yeah, I imagine. Oh, I'm telling you, they have so many. Like, I just really hope the performance is raw. That's something I really hope from Cloud and from everybody, because man, they could really create one of the best scenes, like, again, in gaming history with this.
It's definitely gonna be like, and I do think that maybe even for all of the good things that it does, and again, this goes back to just the perspective generally that I have going into this is for me, I'm just interested to see like a new perspective on something, and I would really like to hopefully see not only the original utilized, but like them create more out of the moment in a positive way where it feels like it resonates more, or maybe gives Aerith a different sort of moment with the characters, which would be really incredible.
Yeah, totally,
Um,
totally.
I just know that no matter how they do it, they're probably gonna be scrutinized heavily for it. But I'm open to it. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, you
So
got to realize that, like you just said, no matter what they do, if it's exactly the same,
yeah,
they get scrutinized. If it's different, they get scrutinized. If it's slightly different. So I think, I mean, the vision has been so good. Just stick to the vision, and I'm gonna love it. That's for sure. Can't
yeah,
wait.
100%. Um, and I know that this is a weird thing to say because you already asked me about it, but how are we doing on time for you?
Whatever you're feeling, man. Yeah, we're at 2 hours 38 minutes. I had to take a bathroom break. That's the only reason I said if you want to take a break, please do, or if you want to end.
I was gonna say I have maybe like 10 minutes left before I
Perfect.
have to maybe start switching gears here, but I don't like
Let's
I didn't realize I was gonna have this limiter of time either, so I apologize for
no,
sort
no,
of
no,
just
it's totally
abruptly
fine.
bringing it up.
Let's
Um,
let's do it. Let's talk final thoughts then and make it awesome. What are you thinking, man? I mean, I'm trying to think if there's
God,
anything
what
else I
are we
wanted to ask you. We
thinking?
covered a million great things today. I've had so much fun.
I have I have I had a question going into this because I very much wanted to hear your thought on
Yeah,
some things, and I
please.
guess this would be a good time to do it. So the first is a question about what sort of maybe something that you want to see in Rebirth, but specifically the moment that you want to see in Rebirth, like in whatever way that is, whether that's just like a recreation or something that you're hoping to expect or something cinematically that you're really intrigued by. The other one was what song would you like to hear
Oh,
from uh, Seven in this that maybe hasn't already been played?
right.
And then the last thing I wanted to ask you was because uh, we've already experienced remake. What is a scene that you really enjoy from Seven remake? Because it's been enough time, I think, since we last talked about it, where maybe like what's the scene that still stays with you from remake and maybe going on into rebirth?
Well, I'll answer your questions backwards. I will say the scene that I like the most. Oh, actually, it's kind of a tough one. There's so many good ones. I would say it's possibly post plate drop with Barret. That
Mm,
one still sticks with me to this day. But a lot of the quiet scenes too. I've said this a million times now. You guys know it. But like, it's the moment it hit me. That's why it's so memorable. That what we talked about earlier is going to happen, and that is like this is a deeply character-driven thing now, not just like a plot explosion of awesome things happening. Kind of like just action scenes and like stuff and lore. Like actually, there's black materia and there's meteor and there's this, and then he goes to the Temple of the Ancients. This is like stuff happening. So when it hit me was when it was literally just Cloud and Tifa talking in Tifa's house or in a room, and I was just like, oh, we just got a 5-minute scene of them talking for just the reason of character that didn't exist in the original at all. It's completely additional. Oh, so then it hit me. It's like, what's gonna happen with those big moments, like with the character, you know what I mean? So that's what got me thinking about the later stuff. So I would say a lot of those moments. I mean, even the resolution scene with Tifa was awesome because it was so unexpected, so simple. But that's what I'm saying. Like, what plot happened in the resolution Tifa scene? Nothing. There's no plot.
yeah, it was just beautiful
Just a
and well
beautiful
done.
moment. And it's like,
Yes.
wow, that's what two humans would do who've been through hell together. Just have a moment, and they tried to take everything they took everything from us again. Incredible. Just a great line, great scene, great writing. That's it. It was a character growth moment, you could argue. Like they became closer, but there was no like, and then they went to the Temple of Ancients and fought this guy. Like it was just a great thing. It's a great
It
thing.
wasn't
So
like the Hobbit movies, sort of like we're impassioning you to sort of feel this thing about an event. It was more like, no,
yeah,
we're just literally spending the time, the valuable time of this remake, making sure that you're spending it with the characters.
Yes.
And like actually seeing what happens to them and how they're feeling and like checking in with them.
Totally.
Which is so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So to now mirror and go say what scenes I want to see in Rebirth is similarly, no, I'll just say vaguely, I want to see that. But I want to see the stuff where I joked about earlier. Oh, how does Vincent talk to Yuffie while they're traveling on the Tiny Bronco?
Yes.
Nobody knows
100%.
on Earth because it never happened, right? So there's nothing, just empty space on the page. So like, I want to see tons of that, and this will add to replayability. I want to see, like, we already know we have the optional scenes. The fact that I'll get to go and hang out with whoever and do these things, replayability is huge. That gives us more lore. It gives us more world building to just exist in the world with these people and everything. So I can't wait for a lot of scenes like that. But I want to be honest, after we talked about that Hideo Kojima level idea of like fading away the synergy abilities and like, Barret, please help me. No, not anymore.
No.
I trusted you. I don't trust you anymore. Oh my goodness. That would be absolutely deranged level of creativity, pure pain, and literally Kojima level insanity. I think that'd be awesome. And I think the stuff with Aerith is super attractive to me. The idea of her, like, I want to see her struggle. And I would love to see the idea of her daydream like Yuna did for a second and say, oh, maybe I could just be a normal girl and have a normal life and be happy. And then realize I can't do that. I have a higher calling. I'm the last ancient. I'm all alone anyway. And I think that would be beautiful. So that's, I guess, a vague scene. As far as the music, I want to see probably the song Reunion comes to mind. A very quiet song.
Yes.
I would love to, you know the song?
Fantastic one.
Yeah, I want to hear this song. I love it. Very strange song. I love this song so much. It's eerie, it's mysterious, it's relaxing. And it's just like got that cool FF7 vibe to it. And I guess finally to say, like, what do I want to see cinematically in the story beyond character and stuff? I really want to see them push, which we're already seeing in the trailers, like kind of the limits of using lensing and like really, really cool ways in the intimate scenes and in the action scenes. I mean, they've nailed all the action scenes so incredibly in Remake. So I'm not really worried about that, especially the pre-rendered ones. But like, I would love to see, even more, like say the fireworks scenes, the gold saucer, the play, stuff like that, where the conversations are there, and I just want to see beautiful images. Like, one of the reasons I love filmmaking and most of the films I like Wong Kar-wai is pretty much my favorite director. It's just beautiful images, man. The frame is like looking at an art gallery. That's what I want to see from this game, and not just in the big crazy moments. I just want to see like glorious images, like paintings. So that's probably what I want to see cinematically, man. And what about you? Let's kick it back to you, man.
Those are fantastic picks, by the way. And Reunion is definitely gonna be one of those songs that when it starts playing, you're like, well, whatever's about to happen. I'm gonna, because
everybody wants to say Cosmo Canyon, but I was like, Reunion. Yeah.
Reunion is such an interesting sort of subtle in between where it could be, because of the definition change alone, in the way that Sephiroth is using it. When it starts playing, you know that some shit's gonna go down. So that's a very good pick. And Cosmo Canyon's just gonna rock. Like,
oh, and one more interjection, because Aaliyah just said this cool thing, talking about character and stuff. Dine is a really good opportunity for like mental health, hard conversations too.
That is sort of like
Dine
what I was getting just from looking at that scene, like that, even though it's so simple, like the line that you brought up, like where he's like, why would you even tell me that like she's alive? Like he's like, and I hate to put it like this, but it just really feels like it's like, this is like a mad dog that is like asking to be put down, and you're just like, why? Like, it's painful. He's not a villain. It's just tragedy. You just see the tragedy on his face and the way that he's saying the lines, where you just, it's unbelievable. So that scene is gonna be, that's gonna suck.
It's gonna suck. And like we were talking about earlier with the sort of mental health focus, it's gonna be one of those like hard mental health conversations, and that one's gonna be dark.
I think that is also, like you're saying, gonna be a really good pivot point to frame Cloud later. I think the way that Dine, because it feels like he feels helpless, like he's not in control of what he's doing, like he is just like acting and like being There's a actual I know that this is some side lore, but you and something that is considered non-canon, but there is a scene with Dynan, the maiden who travels the planet, where he's just covered in blood in the afterlife, and
Yeah.
it's like sticking to him and it won't let go of him, and it's because he's attached himself to all of the guilt, all of the stuff that like kind of drove him to do what happens in the game.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there thinking it's like that's the feeling that like he can't wash any of it off. But to
Yeah.
frame him then and then to see the choice that he makes and then to go and maybe use that framing for what maybe we're going to start seeing with Cloud is going to be a really great way to put into perspective. It's like this person needs help, because if this doesn't get fixed, or if he doesn't get the attention he needs, this might happen to somebody that we really care about.
Yeah, look at him,
you know,
man.
the character that we're playing. So I think that will be really interesting. Good thing that we brought up Dine again, just because he's super good.
Yes.
I will answer these questions quickly. You're too interesting to talk to, Philip. And
Same
Aaliyah,
with
bringing
you.
up that question is perfect. So
Music.
I'll start with this song.
Yeah, keep quick one.
The song is the Genova Life song. Is that the one that we fight in? Oh, even that name is perfect. Genova Life is the one that we fight, I think, in, somebody can correct me, in the water altar after Aerith dies.
Yeah, I believe so.
That, by the way, just the irony of the name would be really good if we fought and that happened. I would love to see a rendition of Aerith's theme done in tandem with a very dark twist on Aerith's theme combined with Genova for that song.
Yeah, agreed.
I think that was something I was like, oh, like she could live and it would be fine and I would be happy about it, but I really want to see what they do musically with that moment when we're fighting that boss.
That's gonna be that's gonna be the hardest thing if they change what happens musically in that moment for people to get over. But we'll see.
Right. 100%. And then moment, I like Sephiroth and Cloud's meeting, and then in remake, that's my favorite from remake because it's just so dense. And then
so good.
Whatever happens with Sephiroth at the end of the game, I want to see what they do. I want to see how they make him menacingly. So
yes,
good stuff.
Absolutely. And then I guess since you got to go in a second, I'll ask: is there anything you want to promote? Any upcoming projects and stuff that you got coming on? Besides, obviously watch him play Rebirth very soon.
Right. I'm trying at the moment to finish my demo playthrough that I did like a month or two ago. I released a reaction video that kind of took out that time. That's coming out. Hopefully, not the trailer reaction, but the demo playthrough. I'm really excited to just kind of release that, and then obviously just kind of waiting with bated breath for Rebirth to come out, and maybe a video in between that. But no, I would honestly I'm actually going to just spend this time promoting Subtext. You should go watch his new video. He's got some really interesting thoughts on the new
Honorable
on the trailer. So please,
great choice.
Please go check out Subtext.
Subtext is great. Yeah, I'm gonna watch it myself later tonight. And I just want to say, can you just mash anything in chat and hit enter so people can click your name and follow? Because guys,
you're so right.
Follow Sleepeasy on Twitch. He usually stream on Twitch, not YouTube, right?
I do Twitch mainly, and you can just look up my name or any sort of theory type in on YouTube for Final Fantasy VII Remake.
And I'm sure on his Twitch channel you can find like links to stuff and everything. So yeah, just get ready. And honestly, dude, I'd love to have you back on once the game's out, and I'm sure we'll have like another 4 years of stuff to talk about.
We're gonna have it's gonna be you, me. We got to get the band back together. Is what's gonna have to happen. That's gonna be an explosively good time.
I can't wait.
And I would love to just talk to you one on one like this. This has been incredibly
totally
awesome.
Yeah, so much fun. I've been wanting to talk to you since LA. I was like, man, I'm just gonna have him on the show. Let's do it. So
this is the moment.
Yeah, please, if you got to get going, do your thing. I'll talk to Chad for a couple minutes afterwards. And man, such a pleasure to chat with you, man. And we miss hanging out with you. So hopefully soon again.
Oh yeah, 100%. And take care, everybody. And then again, Phil, thank you so much for having me. This has been
anytime.
Awesome.
Anytime, man.
Guys, have a good day. Bye.
Have a fantastic night, friend.